Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 339 of the Prancing Pony Podcast, where we're cutting a great dash in the Shire with our songs and our tales and our finery.
It's nice to be called lordly for once, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
See, I'm already used to it. I'm Sean Marchese, the Lord of the Mark.
That's right.
And I'm here with the simple little man of the West who could never go back to ordinary attire at this point, Alan Sisto.
Well, if I did, I'd probably disappoint Brian Sibley.
Quite true.
Definitely. Well, folks, join us as Sam and Rosie get married and the shadow of old troubles returns to Frodo in the second of our 3 episodes on the Grey Havens, the final chapter of The Lord of the Rings.
And no matter how you arrived, folks, you are all welcome here in the common room. Mm-hmm. Here at the Prancing Pony Podcast, we are reading and talking our way through Middle-earth, with plenty of speculation and bad jokes along the way.
Yeah, we love our deep dives into the lore, discussing our favorite themes, and a whole lot more.
But we try to keep it light and fun, like a couple of friends chatting at the pub. And we're glad you've joined us.
Indeed we are, and I'm sure you'll be glad you joined as well. But before we get to tonight's chapter discussion, we want to introduce you to somebody whose work you really should check out.
He is a filmmaker whose 2009 fan film, The Hunt for Gollum, made waves all over Tolkien fandom and is still making waves all over the Tolkien fandom and is still the only version of that story that you can see.
Correct.
Please welcome to the Prancing Pony Podcast. Really excited to get to talk to him here today, Chris Bouchard.
Hello, gentlemen. Lovely to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us.
It's lovely to have you.
It really is.
No, we're so excited to have you here, Chris. Thank you for joining us. Really looking forward to talking to you here today. But before we get into the movie, you've heard the show before. Hopefully you know that since this is your first time on the Prancing Pony Podcast, there is a question we need to ask you because we ask everybody who comes on the show, and that is, when and how did you first discover Tolkien's work?
Yes, that's a question I'm really happy to answer. And yeah, big fan of the Prancing Pony Podcast here. Yeah, I guess I was 10-ish years old and found the books on my parents' shelves, or they gave them to me, and I just read The Hobbit, maybe through school, or I just got through that and I realized this was a world I wanted to read, and fell in love with those books, at a young age, and read them many, many times.
Awesome. Did you just keep reading The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings over and over again? Did you dive into the Silmarillion and Unfinished Tales? People do it different ways, don't they? What was your particular path to going deeper?
I think I read The Hobbit perhaps once, maybe twice, but it was The Lord of the Rings, and that I read many times before diving into Silmarillion and the rest many years later. And I've dug out the old copy. It's really old, well-leafed copy. A few notes in there.
Wow. Beautiful. I love it.
Beautiful old copy.
Folks, you can't see what we're seeing here, but it's old, but it looks like it's well preserved. It's in really good condition.
Yeah, it's well-leafed, let's say. But fell in love and would read it on trips and holidays and reread it many times. And because it's such an emotional story, as well as the world building and the detail and the sort of the characters and just the depth there. There's nothing else really there, is there? And then I was a student and I occasionally would reread it. And then I was a filmmaking student, started leafing through at one point thinking, it would be so cool to do a fan film, but forget all the Star Wars stuff. What about maybe there's a little story that's possible without any money? And then eventually decided to go and try and make this film.
Well, speaking of which, that kind of leads into my next question, because you're talking about your love for Middle-earth parallel along with your experience as a student filmmaker. Tell us a bit about your career as a filmmaker. How did you get started writing and directing? And then it sounds like you've touched on this a little bit. Explore a little bit more with us. What led to your decision to make that fan film based on this particular storyline, since it wasn't part of the Peter Jackson films?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was a young filmmaker, an indie filmmaker, just wanted to go and make something ambitious. And I was into visual effects and trying to do CGI, and shoot things cheaply with a digital camera. They'd just come out. You could do amazing things without a huge budget. But I still knew it's complex. Like, making any film is such a logistical thing. And I knew we'd need more than costumes, and we'd need really good actors. And I'd made some zombie films as a student before and sort of messed around a lot. And I had a lot of
good
fun
practical
with it.
effects. Lot of practical effects experience with that stuff, right? A lot of blood and prosthetics and stuff. Yeah.
The latex and stuff that the sculpting of all these things. So I knew a few people who could sculpt as well. And that would work. That's kind of where the orc costumes and makeup and stuff came together. But I kind of wanted to combine all these practical effects and the CGI stuff and some simple locations. But I knew that if you're doing something on a budget, you only want to have a couple of characters or a couple of actors, because it's much easier logistically to get them in the same place at the same time. And, if we're going out to the mountains or the forest, basically all we did. And going back to the books after a long time of not reading them and hunting through some of the appendices and different possible stories, and prequels are always cool because it's origin stories territory.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Aragorn's that character who's so deep and goes back so far in his previous kind of, he's sort of undercover, isn't he, with the Rohirrim and with Gondor and all these possible backstories. And but then just stumbling into that chapter where they talk about the hunt for Gollum, I was like, and just suddenly thinking, oh, I can't do a full CGI character, but what if he's in a sack and he's mostly in the bag? And as soon as I realized that was possible without spending a lot of money, then I was like, oh, we have to try and do something about the hunt for Gollum. And Gollum's such a cool character as well. And it was then the homage to Andy Serkis' Gollum, because obviously that's such a distinctive interpretation of Gollum that that is well loved, and so it became an homage to the movies by Peter Jackson and the trying to get more depth from the books in there when I could. Because and as filmmakers, we'd all grown up on the behind the scenes on the DVDs. So that was our film school in a way, and all of us just wanted to go and do a bit of that ourselves. So that's kind of how it began.
That's exciting.
That's so cool. Well, let's go back to, scripting process, actually getting the story in place. You talked about going back to the books. For folks who haven't seen the film, what Tolkien sources did you use for the story? What were your main sections of the book that you're going back to for this?
Sure. Well, there's that conversation in Rivendell where Aragorn himself, I think he recounts that he searched for 7 years or 8 years for Gollum on Gandalf's instruction, and they eventually tracked him down near the Dead Marshes. And this is about all you know. So I realized there's a story here where Aragorn could be searching and various things could happen along the way, or we could explore his memories or perhaps his foresight, which is something I really wanted to try and hint at, which probably I didn't have time in the trilogy to really dig into. And so a few of those themes I wanted to get in. And then in the appendices as well, it's mentioned a few times. I didn't actually connect the Unfinished Tales chapter at the start there. And it was later on when we were scripting that I tried to feed in a few hints to that. There's not much more detail there, really, but there's a little more, isn't there? And then try and connect it a little bit to the film trilogy and sort of how, because we wanted to visually perhaps be a little reverent and pay respect to the cinematic visual style.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when the visual design is from, John Howe and Alan Lee.
Yeah.
That's it's a good guideline, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So cool to be able to play around in that kind of visual.
Yeah.
Well, and play around it seems like exactly the right phrase to use because there's not a whole lot of detail in the story. I mean, obviously, the broad strokes, the beats of how he finds Gollum and everything, but I mean, it gave you some room to play around, to kind of add some action sequences and kind of, add some additional dramatic elements that we don't necessarily have from the books. And I have to imagine it was just great fun to be able to play, like you said, to play around in that space.
It totally was. And of course, the film is low budget, so it's rough around the edges because of that. But we still tried sort of, without spending money, like the only budget went on costumes and on like making the orcs and feeding people jam sandwiches and things. But it was like, that was like $5,000, right? There was a lot of shoots, and we filmed one weekend a month for a year. And we'd figure, okay, we can afford to film a scene in this forest or on that mountain in Wales, or in this church for like Thranduil's Halls, or this pub in London, the old pub for Prancing Pony.
Oh, wow.
And we can pull together like these skilled crew that we need. And so we spend 4 or 5 weeks organizing each shoot, rehearsing the actors, like making the costumes with costume making days where all the team came together. So it became a real like it was a great team spirit and kind of a special time for us all.
That's great.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I imagine it
But
would
coming
have
back to
to
the
be
story.
given the budget. Yeah.
Yeah. But then so the script started off just being quite loose and knowing that obviously Aragorn's going to find Gollum, and then there might be a few conversations when he's in the sack, and then it's bookended by Gandalf at the start and at the end. So sending Aragorn off, and then sort of a debrief at the end where they discuss what this means and try and hint at, we now know that he has made his got a few lines in there. He made his slow sneaking way step by step, mile by mile south to Mordor.
Yeah.
So wherever I could, tried to get in some dialogue that was authentic. However, I'm sure there were moments where we were definitely a bit too indulgent or accidentally overquoted the movies, and it's so hard not to. But we really tried to get authenticity in there. I think that was it. As a filmmaker, for me, I enjoy films that are really authentic to the world.
Yeah.
And so tried wherever possible to be as authentic as we could, sort of hint to those aspects of the characters or pull out lines where we could from the books.
Yeah. That's the kind of stuff that helps it really feel like the world. It makes it really feel like Middle Earth. And I think you achieved that, honestly.
Yeah.
It had the right feel. And I know we'll talk more about that in a bit, but I'm just curious, was there anything that you wanted to include in the story that you couldn't for any reason? Like, you're just like, that there's no way that we could do that on our budget, or like anything like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe like in the books, Aragorn leads Gollum ties him up and leads him on a rope or something.
Yeah.
So obviously we couldn't afford to do that. So that was out from the start. But it was, there's not much that can happen in the film. We did pack things in, like what if there's a band of orcs also hunting for Gollum, which you guys tell me if that's a stretch, but perhaps conceivably there could be.
I don't think so. No,
we don't know that it didn't happen, right?
That's the thing. Yeah. I mean, it's all about, there are so many blanks in the story, and filling them in with something like that. We know the orcs went after him when he was, in Thranduil's very poorly kept jail.
Yeah.
So it's not a surprise to find that they might be searching for him at another point.
Yeah.
Well, then, yes, we managed to get that in. And then perhaps it is a liberty. There's a Black Rider who's sort of sighted and appears to is interacting, Maybe that's a little far for some people.
Still cool, though.
But,
Still cool.
It worked. I mean,
it was cool to shoot. It was cool to visualize, to bring together. But aside from those action beats, it needed some threat to make this interesting.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be a 20-minute film and it would have just been hiking, striding across Middle Earth for 20 minutes. And it's it needs to be more than that. So then it was what could we come up with that's in keeping? So there's this ranger he meets, a fictional ranger we called Arathir, who has been perhaps spying or infiltrating or kind of out there just in the Far East, and he's bringing back rumors of this ghost that drinks blood and trying to hint at all those things.
That was a cool way to bring in those stories. I thought that was really neat.
That bit worked quite well, and some of the interplay where they're sort of cat and mousing each other in the forest, trying to hint at ranger skills, but would love to shoot that much better with the sound and twig snapping and sort of trying to hint at all these tracking skills that Aragorn would have had.
Yeah.
Would love to shoot a bit more with finding bones in the cave and sort of things like, more clues. Whereas in the film, we ran out of time on a few shoots, so he finds Gollum fairly easily. But then again, it is a 40-minute film. He has to kind of...
Yeah. And it gave you more time for some of these great action set pieces, which were really cool. So
Those were pretty spectacular, yeah.
They were fun. I mean, the fight choreographers were professional, and all the orcs were stage combat people who just had the time of their lives throwing each other around.
I'm a fan of great fight choreography. And
absolutely.
I mean, especially I guess it wasn't like the final battle of the film, but the big battle between Aragorn and the Orc party, that was pretty spectacular, Chris.
That was amazing, really.
It felt very, I mean this as a compliment, it felt very Peter Jackson-ish. It felt like an homage to some of the fights in his film. Especially things like, Amon Hen and things like that.
Yeah.
Definitely trying to hint at that. I mean, we went all out. We spent 4 days, I think 3 days filming only that scene.
Oh, wow.
And we did rehearse. So Adrian, who plays Aragorn, he rehearsed it for months coming down to London and going into workshops and rehearsing the move. So he was automatics. He could do it again and again and again. And we filmed each hit almost separately and got some master shots spinning around on a sort of makeshift Steadicam thing, so we could sort of have those continuous.
So you're getting the hits from multiple angles so that you can edit it the right way.
Definitely. I think we had 2 or 3 cameras on it, and we've had tried to go max, and that was the one where just getting all those orcs, 16 of them I think in costume. We had hero orcs who were more detailed and some who were background and some who were going to be so just getting, we had an army of costume makers and people with makeup and hair and wigs and costumes. So it was about 45 people on that shoot. And we were camping as well next to the forest, and so it was a great fun kind of experience as well. But we sort of were in the wild ourselves as well as as well as.
There's definitely some metaphor there about. I mean, you can hear Tom Shippey now talking about how you were in the wilderness, so you were bewildered, and
definitely,
Yeah,
there's 2 fight directors, Ruth and Rachel. They were brilliant. They kind of put a lot into it, brought a lot of skilled swords folks into it. And even the Nazgul fight, that's a very skilled swordsman who's in the whole costume. And it's pitch black in the dark, right? And he can't see much through this thing. But pulled off some incredible moves. And but we just wanted to try and do everything professionally, but without everyone being a volunteer. And that was very clear. And it was cool because everybody really wanted to be there. So the atmosphere was amazing.
Yeah, the desire to create this and to put the effort in even without it being a paid position is really impressive. I think that's one of the things that stuck out to me was the quality of the cast, especially in relation to that. The fact that everybody was a volunteer. A lot of times with fan films, there's a tendency to cast, I don't know, I think we might use the word like impersonator, somebody who looks like or kind of you might mistake them for another actor or character on some sort of surfacey level, and just tends to feel a little bit more like cosplay. But you definitely were able to achieve something a lot deeper than that, a lot more than that. You were able to cast actors who, for lack of a better word, inhabited their roles. You talked about authenticity earlier, and that's really what came across. Talk to us about that casting process. What were you looking for when finding people, other than their willingness to do it for free?
Yeah, like availability for a year for all the weekends.
Yeah, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, that's quite a lot. Yeah, I mean, it was easier because most of the film's just Aragorn on his own or with Gollum's hidden. So that did make the logistics of it all easier. But yeah, in terms of finding the cast, wanted to have the best possible acting we could, and so cast actors who were really good. And so Adrian is like the lead. I'd worked with him on the zombie films before, so I knew he was great, and we would become friends through that. So I edited plenty of footage of him and directed him before, and so I knew he was great with the physical, willing to do the training, which he loved actually, to really get the sword skills up. So he kind of, and he had the sort of stoic stare in his eyes. He's got that kind of something.
He definitely did, yeah. Maybe
slightly recalls the character, but he took it really seriously and really enjoyed it, and kept coming back month after month down to London from, he's up north, you see. Yeah, he was amazing. And then for Gandalf, we sort of reached out on the casting network saying, hey, we're doing this independent film. It's, an indie film, but if anyone's out there to audition, so we did a couple of auditions, and then got a few people auditioning for Gandalf, and Pat O'Connor showed up one day, and we couldn't believe when he walked in, he just kind of was already Gandalf, but the wig and the costume and his voice as well is so deep and rich. He narrates the intro, and it's really nice actually, I think. It's a different interpretation a little bit of Gandalf, but we sort of, he knew he was also trying to conjure a little bit of Ian McKellen, only because this being a short film, there's not time to completely reinvent the character, I think. Yeah. And then perhaps the audience don't want necessarily that. So, and then, Gollum's voice is actually, was a friend from the zombie film as well. So he was a cameraman, he was lighting in The Prancing Pony, and he was doing multiple roles. It's Gareth Bruff, his name, Gareth. good friend still. And yes, he was the voice of Gollum. We knew he could do a Gollum impression from those days, so he was kind of automatically.
He was the guy who was doing the Gollum voice on set just randomly, right?
Right.
All the time. The thing
There's
is,
always one guy on the set who's just like doing silly voices, and you're like, if I ever do a Gollum movie, that's the guy, right?
He is, and he's so much talented. He also was drawing the artwork and the maps, and we made our own Middle Earth maps. He was, and then he was an orc, so he really wanted to be an orc. So he's like the big orc who's fighting Aragorn at the end, the sort of leader of the orcs.
The one with the sword that's like bigger than Aragorn,
which he made himself. He made his own props and costume and everything.
Really?
But yeah, imagine him walking around. He's enormous. He's 6 foot tall, so he's kind of walking around as the orc, doing the Gollum impression, and it's kind of like
That's great.
It's fun. Yeah, he's a great talent actually.
Oh, that's great.
Good stuff.
I mean, a testament to, sounds like the way you kind of got to this point. And I know you've continued to do films. You're doing films now, but to get to the point of The Hunt for Gollum, it sounds like you did a lot of student films, just like work with people and find who you enjoy working with. And that's kind of how you find your group, right? The people who are going to be willing to do this project with you.
Definitely crazy enough
really
too, because it takes a lot to make. I mean, obviously, making a podcast, like any media effort like this, it takes a lot of commitment and dedication. But a film, and especially, it takes so much time. I mean,
every weekend for a year, and all the training and practice, and
months of editing.
See, we don't have to look good. Nothing has to look good on this show. It just has to sound good.
Well, you do sound good. And the music as well was a big part. Like,
it was.
And the visuals and trying to, bit of visual effects. And we put backgrounds of bigger mountains in that England doesn't really have to sort of make it feel more epic, and the visuals, and then the music sort of tied it together.
That really fit. I don't think I ever noticed that those mountains were not.
I didn't notice that any of it was added in.
I might not have been looking for it. I'm sure maybe a VFX artist would have been like, oh, yeah, you can tell those are digitally added. But,
probably,
99.9% of us watching it would never have noticed that. So good stuff.
And is it true that your visual effects, like some of your visual effects, you crowdsource those online? Is that right?
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
That was the cool thing about the fan community and the way that back in 2008, we put a little trailer out, and then we were like, anyone want to contribute some shots or do some matte paintings or some background or some digital effects? And loads of people were like, I'd love to do that
so
for my maybe my student project, or maybe I'm a professional, I want to do something in Middle Earth and something for the artistry of it. And so we had over 50 artists in the credits who did a shot or helped with a shot. It was a big team effort. So Adam Thomas, who VFX supervisor, he organized a large team, and we'd farm out shots on the equivalent of Dropbox, but didn't exist yet, I don't think, and send them the background, send them the footage, and then they'd add in, make it look like Middle Earth, or turn like a field in just outside London and put in some mountains back there. So there's lots of tricksy cheats in there for sure.
That's filmmaking, man.
That's
what it's all about, right?
It's magic for a reason. Yeah. I am sure that you are proud, and frankly, The Hunt for Gollum, you absolutely should be proud of it. You've hinted at a few of these things, but I want to get a little more insight. Every film has its setbacks. Every production has its challenges. Something goes wrong on set or doesn't quite turn out the way you wanted. Is there something that maybe didn't go quite the way you wanted, or maybe something that did happen that you maybe look back on and laugh now? Something in the film that you would like to be George Lucas and redo in a special edition where maybe Han didn't shoot first, though of course we all know he did.
That's a good reference. I mean, loads of things would be cool to do with more detail or even more authenticity. There's a couple of scenes that would have liked to do a bit more with Gandalf and Aragorn. Maybe, hopefully, they'll explore some of this in the newly announced movie. I don't know. Some hints at Aragorn's questioning his destiny, and perhaps Gandalf's hinting, Denethor down there, mate. He's not all up to it, like, and trying to hint that perhaps Aragorn still has some doubts. That self-doubt at this stage perhaps is still prevalent, and he's been so long in the wilderness and so long unknown, masked and hidden. So another would have been a conversation scene, I suppose, but it would have been cool to get another one of those in. But we were definitely out of time, I think, by the time we had that idea came through. And there's a few things, like it's when the elves show up and sort of help scare away the Black Rider, and sort of towards the end, we jump straight to Thranduil's halls and kind of the interrogation of sort of, we jump pretty quickly to the end. So a few small things, but I mean, we're still pretty proud of it because it's just a labor of love. Like,
you should be. It's fantastic. And I think that's the thing that will show. Folks, listeners, if you have not seen this, please do. We're going to include a link in our show notes. 40 minutes thereabouts?
Yeah, 39
And
minutes.
Absolutely every single minute is worth watching. And, really we said at the beginning of this, it's the only version of The Hunt for Gollum that you can see right now. So go see it.
No, thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting few weeks since, I mean, we made this film 15 years ago. And then it's been really nice the last few weeks. A lot of the internet's been rewatching it or talking about it. Yeah. It's been very surreal.
I bet it has. I bet it has.
With all of the surprise interest in it, and again, but really nice as well to just to remember. And so the team are coming back together. We're having a reunion in a couple of weeks.
Oh, good.
Oh, cool.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if the Andy Serkis production, when it comes out in a couple of years, how much of your version they've sort of tapped into. I mean, we know that Jackson does a lot of homages, right? You see in his films, you see several homages to the Bakshi story in Lord of the Rings. The camera angles for Proudfoot, the scene with the Nazgul, the Black Rider walking on the road with the tree and the hobbits underneath it. Very much, frame by frame similarities to Bakshi. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of nods they give to your project.
That'll be funny because a lot of our shots are nods to obviously Peter Jackson's style, so it'll be a real feedback loop.
We've come full circle, right?
If that happens, I'm sure they have they're a brilliant idea. So
well, they're also extraordinarily well funded. It's a little different.
Yeah, definitely a little bit more. So it's exciting though, isn't it? I mean, very exciting to think what that film could be, and I think it's a great choice for a story. If I could say so myself.
Well, I'm sure you do.
Obviously you do.
Very interesting to see how they tell it and where they go and which parts they dig out,
Yeah.
Well, Chris, I hope the next couple of years are interesting as this all develops. I hope that you continue to enjoy renewed recognition of the amazing work you did 15 years ago. And I do hope people will go out and look for The Hunt for Gollum online and watch it. It's definitely worth your time, folks.
Oh, well, thank you.
But for now, Chris, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us here today. It's been
thank you, Chris.
Awesome getting to hear about your project, and we look forward to whatever else is coming next for you.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much. I'm sure a real pleasure. And look forward to listening more to the show.
All right. Thank you. Farewell.
All right. And with that, it is time for Alan and I to jump back into the text. So, Alan, why don't you go ahead and take the first reading today?
I will indeed. Sam stayed at first at the Cottons with Frodo, but when the new row was ready, he went with the gaffer. In addition to all his other labors, he was busy directing the cleaning up and restoring of Bag End, but he was often away in the Shire on his forestry work. So he was not at home in early March and did not know that Frodo had been ill. On the 13th of that month, Farmer Cotton found Frodo lying on his bed. He was clutching a white gem that hung on a chain about his neck, and he seemed half in a dream. "It is gone forever," he said, "and now all is dark and empty." But the fit passed, and when Sam got back on the 25th, Frodo had recovered, and he said nothing about himself. In the meanwhile, Bag End had been set in order, and Merry and Pippin came over from Crickhollow, bringing back all the old furniture and gear, so that the old hole soon looked very much as it always had done. When all was at last ready, Frodo said, "When are you going to move in and join me, Sam?" Sam looked a bit awkward. "There is no need to come yet if you don't want to," said Frodo. "But you know the gaffer is close at hand, and he will be very well looked after by Widow Rumble." "It's not that, Mr. Frodo," said Sam, and he went very red. "Well, what is it?" "It's Rosie, Rose Cotton," said Sam. "It seems she didn't like my going abroad at all, poor lass. But as I hadn't spoken, she couldn't say so. And I didn't speak because I had a job to do first. But now I have spoken, and she says, 'Well, you've wasted a year, so why wait longer?' 'Wasted,' I says. 'I wouldn't call it that.' Still, I see what she means. I feel torn in two, as you might say." "I see," said Frodo. You want to get married, and yet you want to live with me in Bag End, too. But my dear Sam, how easy. Get married as soon as you can, and then move in with Rosie. There's room enough in Bag End for as big a family as you could wish for. And so it was settled. Sam Gamgee married Rose Cotton in the spring of 1420, which was also famous for its weddings, and they came and lived at Bag End.
I love this.
Go Sam, go Rosie.
Congratulations, you two kids.
Happy couple.
All right, so after the glorious spring of 1420 that we ended with last episode, remember proper 1420, the ale was, the malt was good and everything. So now we come back to see what's happening with Frodo and Sam. And it really is coming back, because we ended sometime after April 6th, 1420, which was the date the Malorn bloomed. But now this is actually before that. This is the time between Yule and April.
Exactly. So it is a bit of a flashback. We're going back to see what's gone on with them in the same time that the spring has been happening or building up to. So during all the reconstruction that took place between the end of the Scouring and Yule, Sam and Frodo had been staying at the Cottons. And I just got to say, Sam, stay out of Rose's room. Behave yourself. I hope my Sam has behaved himself and not given proper satisfaction.
Oh, no. No.
He'll
make an honest woman of her first.
That's right. Of course he would. He's Sam, for crying out loud, man. Bagshot Row had been restored, and it's New Row now, of course, and he went there to live with his dad and take care of him. That's Sam in a nutshell right there.
I mean, totally is.
Yeah.
And here we get explicit confirmation of something that we suspected when we talked about last episode, and that's the fact that it was actually Sam who was managing the repairs and the restoration, at least of Bag End itself. He was in a sort of a directing role with all of this,
taking on the management of it and the organization of the repairs.
Yeah. And we also get a mention of his Johnny Appleseed days, or I don't know, Johnny Malorn Tree and other trees
Johnny
days.
Gamgee trees.
Yeah. Where he's going around the Shire and he's planting saplings all over the place with a single grain of that magic Galadriel dust everywhere he goes.
Now, that's magic dust from Galadriel's garden. It's not
dust from Galadriel.
Just want to make sure we're clear on that.
She has not been cremated.
No. Though I suspect that would probably work too. I don't know.
Probably. It would probably be quite magical.
It would. But that, of course, means since he was out and about in the Shire doing that, he wasn't around on March 13th when Frodo was found by Farmer Cotton in some really half nightmare state. And I don't think it's a stretch, folks, to say that in his dream, he's clutching onto the ring that he used to wear around his neck. Instead, of course, he's actually clutching that white gem, but it does feel like that. And this, of course, is the gem that Arwen gave him at the beginning of Many Partings. And I'm going to go back to that just to kind of refresh your memory. That's where we read, "But the Queen Arwen said, 'A gift I will give you, for I am the daughter of Elrond. I shall not go with him now when he departs to the havens. For mine is the choice of Luthien, and as she, so have I chosen, both the sweet and the bitter. But in my stead you shall go, ring-bearer, when the time comes, and if you then desire it. If your hurts grieve you still, and the memory of your burden is heavy, then you may pass into the west, until all your wounds and weariness are healed. But wear this now in memory of Elfstone and Evenstar, with whom your life has been woven.' And she took a white gem like a star that lay upon her breast, hanging upon a silver chain, and she set the chain about Frodo's neck. 'When the memory of the fear and the darkness troubles you,' she said, 'this will bring you aid.'"
It almost feels like she knew that he was going to have these dreams of clutching the ring, because I think you're right. I think we are meant to think of him clutching the ring in his dream, and it's like she knew that was going to happen, and so she gave him something to wear in that exact spot,
in its place. Yes,
right. That would actually bring him strength and comfort in this time.
Yeah, it's not a ring. It's not a brooch. It's not a circlet. It's something that he can wear as a necklace in the same place where the ring once dangled. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
And that will actually bring healing or aid, she says. I love that.
Yeah, I do too.
So that's the significance of the gem that he's wearing. But let's talk about the significance of this date.
Oh, yeah.
This is March 13th. And 1 year ago today, or 2 years ago in podcast time, but 1 year in Middle-earth time.
Yeah.
We read, "Hardly had Sam hidden the light of the Starglass when she came." Ooh, folks, I think y'all know who's coming. A little way ahead and to his left, he saw suddenly, issuing from a black hole of shadow under the cliff, the most loathly shape that he had ever beheld. Horrible, beyond the horror of an evil dream. Most like a spider she was, but huger than the great hunting beasts, and more terrible than they because of the evil purpose in her remorseless eyes. Those same eyes that he had thought daunted and defeated, there they were lit with a fell light again, clustering in her outthrust head. Great horns she had, and behind her short, stalk-like neck was her huge, swollen body, a vast, bloated bag swaying and sagging between her legs. Its great bulk was black, blotched with livid marks. But the belly underneath was pale and luminous, and gave forth a stench. Her legs were bent, with great knob joints high above her back, and hairs that stuck out like steel spines, and at each leg's end there was a claw. As soon as she had squeezed her soft, squelching body and its folded limbs out of the upper exit from her lair, she moved with a horrible speed, now running on her creaking legs, now making a sudden bound. She was between Sam and his master. Either she did not see Sam, or she avoided him for the moment as the bearer of the light, and fixed all her intent upon one prey, upon Frodo, bereft of his vial, running heedless up the path, unaware yet of his peril. Swiftly he ran, but Shelob was swifter. In a few leaps, she would have him.
Oh, man, that takes me back. That is terrifying and disgusting and vile, and it just reminds you, no wonder that a year later he is experiencing this horror again. You know, the horror of being stung and paralyzed, and then, of course, captured by the orcs and everything, and stripped of his ring.
Right, everything that happened after that,
I mean, thankfully, he was stripped of his ring by Sam, who thought he was dead, rather than the orcs who would have taken it and, you know, would have been a miserable existence there. But I'd almost forgotten how disgusting she was.
It's such a vivid description, isn't it? This is,
man.
We see, you know, again, Tolkien, his descriptive passages can be really creepy and really icky when he wants them to. And this is one of those moments, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like the slower you go, the nastier it is, because you're able to pay more attention to each and every one of those disgusting phrases. I mean, everything.
And just the words her squelching body. I think that's the one that's
the squelching body. Just, ooh. And he even uses alliteration again a lot, right? I mean, squeezed her soft, squelching body, and then you've got the bloated bag and the swaying and sagging, and the bulk was black, blotched, and the belly. And it just drives the point home over and over, and it's so disgusting, and I'm so glad we're done with her. I did think it was interesting. Remembering the vial and the effect that it had on her, and remembering that the light, you know, we always talk about it as being the light of Eärendil, and it is, but the light of Eärendil is the light of the Silmaril, and the light of the Silmaril is the light of the trees, and the light of the trees is what her mom drank for breakfast.
That's a very good point.
And yet here it is for her, the thing that, I mean, that's so cool.
It's a little bit of revenge for the light, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good catch. It's come full circle.
Thousands of years later, and, you know, a few degrees removed, but 100%.
That's really cool.
So cool. But yeah, that explains, to be honest, why Frodo is ill on this day. You know, I mean,
yeah. I mean, everything that he went through, like you said, I mean, being stung and being bound and then found by orcs, and utterly traumatic.
Yeah.
Now, what do you make of him crying out in the dream, this bit about now all is dark and empty? Because that seems to be a reference to what happens later, doesn't it? That seems like a reference to being robbed of the ring, to me at least.
It really does. Well, I think so. I mean, the fact that he's clutching where the ring would have been is indicative of that. And just the first part of that statement, it is gone forever. So he is clearly talking about the ring.
Right, yeah.
But part of me is like, okay, the ring is gone. Why is it now dark and empty? And yet remember the hold that ring would have had over him.
Yeah.
Losing the ring, even though it was evil, losing the ring is still a trauma to him.
Yeah. It was still something that he had compulsion towards, an addiction towards. It had a hold over him. And losing that is going to leave a hole where that was before, even though that was a hole filled with something evil and corrupting. But he feels the loss of it. I think it's interesting that it happens on this date, which is not the date that the ring was destroyed. But maybe the ring, the first time he lost the ring, you know, when Sam took it from him, maybe that's the first time he felt that absence of the ring. I don't know.
Yeah, because when he woke up, when he would have come to after being poisoned, he would have come to with the orcs surrounding him. he would have thought it had been taken by the orcs.
That's true.
So to him, it's not just it's gone and it's gone to the worst place possible.
That's true. So that's another meaning to all is dark and empty, because all is going to be dark and empty because the ring's gone back to the worst person in the world to have it.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think it differs from the loss that he experienced on the 25th, which it's interesting because that date comes up next, right? That's the time that Sam gets back a couple of weeks later. Frodo's recovered. Notice that he doesn't say anything. We'll come back to that theme because there's another time where he's sick and doesn't tell Sam.
Mm-hmm.
But when Sam comes back, it is the 25th of March. That's the anniversary of the date of the destruction of the ring, which, as you pointed out earlier, doesn't seem to have that same kind of impact on Frodo.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with that. Like, why that would seem, I would think, to have had as much of an impact on Frodo.
Because that is actually when he lost the ring forever.
Yeah.
And especially when we're going to talk about some of his regret at the way that played out.
Yeah.
A little foreshadowing for later in the episode, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we do have some more fun things to talk about on that. That's a good point. So maybe we'll save it for then, yeah.
Maybe so, but maybe it is as simple as, or one possible interpretation is, it's the March 13th date. It's the date that he lost the ring and thought that the quest was lost.
That's true.
Sauron
because at least
ring.
on the 25th, the quest was accomplished. Even if he didn't accomplish it himself,
right,
it was done. Whereas on the 13th, he thought it had failed.
Right. And this might be that despair returning to him. Because he was in despair when Sam
he very much was. I mean, when Sam was able to tell him, oh, no, I've got it, it absolutely changed Frodo's life for about a millisecond before he was like, give it back, you thief.
Right. For a millisecond, things were great. It's like, oh, Hugh, hey, give it back.
Yeah, that's right. I need that now. Yeah.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, getting back to the text, by this point, a couple of weeks later, Sam gets back, and by this point, the work at Bag End is done.
Mm-hmm.
Merry and Pippin are now bringing back all the furniture that they'd moved to Crick Hollow back in the fall of 2 years prior. That's got to feel good.
I love that because, of course, if there's anybody in the Shire who should be movers, it's Merry and Pippin. I mean, they're basically giants now.
Right.
So they should have some, starving college student moving service, even though, of course, they're basically Hobbit nobility.
Yeah, they don't need to do manual labor like that, but they would be really good at it.
They'd be very good at it, right? Need me to move that couch? Let me pick it up and carry it over my head.
Right. They're walking around with the couch over there.
Now great. I'm picturing hobbits on roids,
Yeah. Things are starting to get a little bit back to normal here at Bag End. Everything looks almost like it did in August of 3018, back before all this stuff started.
Yeah.
And then that leads Frodo to... Now that the house is ready,
right? Exactly.
I'm going to use the assumptive clothes on you. So when are you going to move in with me?
I know. I love that. It's not, do you want to move in?
Not will you, but just like, so when are you going
exactly. I love that. Now, I have to wonder what's prompting this from Frodo. I mean, they didn't live together previously, so why now? And I'm wondering, is this, and maybe the answer is yes to both, but is this Frodo needing Sam because he needs somebody to take care of him for a bit? Or is it that Frodo is imagining that Sam needs someone to take care of?
I think it's a little of both.
Yeah.
And I think that they've been together on this quest for so long that I think Frodo probably has the wisdom to recognize that neither one of them can really live without the other's help at this point.
That's fair. No, I think you make a good point there.
Yeah. And Sam, his response is a little awkward. I mean, because... he wants to do this.
Of course he does.
He also wants to, well, we'll talk about him being torn in two, but I mean, it's understandably awkward.
Yeah.
When he responds awkwardly, Frodo kind of dials it back a little bit.
Yeah, he reads the room. Frodo can read a room. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, ooh, maybe that was a little too forward.
Yeah.
and so he kind of changes it a little bit. It's like, okay, you don't have to move in right now, but, your dad's nearby. That old lady down the road, she'll watch after him. And,
I love that. Speaking of her, by the way, the nomenclature tells us that Rumble was a name that had no meaning at that time in the Shire. It was just the name of this old Hobbit woman. It's just a name.
Widow Rumble.
Yeah.
What do you think is going on between her and the Gaffer?
I was trying to avoid that. I don't know.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge here.
Yeah.
You were joking about the Gaffer not wanting Sam and Rosie to spend too much time together alone.
Yeah, maybe the Gaffer himself is, get on out, Sam. I got Widow Rumble coming over.
Widow Rumble's coming over.
I don't know. We did read that section about the the horny hands of the Gaffers and Giffers. Sorry. I apologize.
No.
not what that word means in that context. I'm sorry. No, it does
absolutely
not.
not.
No. Well, about that.
Moving on.
Moving quite on. So after Sam's little awkwardness, and he's like, well, I didn't want to bring this up, but now that you've asked me to move in, I kind of have to. He spills the beans about Rosie. And before we move on, by the way, I want to be clear about a word that Sam uses here. He says, I hadn't spoken. I didn't speak. And now I have spoken. Seems a roundabout way to us to talk about romantic interest, but Sam is using speak and spoken here in the sense of to propose marriage, to make one's intentions known.
Yeah, and I think that's clear from the text, but hopefully listeners know that we're going to do a little more word nerdery on it than that. Because I did think about this. I was like, is this actually a specific meaning of speak? Obviously, that's what it means here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked it up in the Oxford English Dictionary, and sure enough, to propose marriage is a specific meaning of speak listed in the OED going back to the early 1600s.
Wow.
The earliest work that's cited for this specific meaning of speak is in Shakespeare's Othello. So that was 1616, but it continued to be used in a very specific sense for hundreds of years down to the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I guess these days, the closest thing we see to this is maybe thinking of somebody being spoken for.
Oh, yeah.
So you kind of get it in that construction.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a specific meaning of the word speak. And so Sam's really not being as vague as it might otherwise seem. He's being very clear that he wants to propose to Rosie.
Absolutely. And she'd had her eye on him before, but Sam hadn't spoken. So she didn't say anything about his leaving. Of course, now I can only picture in my head the little guy from The Mandalorian. I have spoken.
I have spoken.
But Sam's clear here. Like, I didn't speak because I had a job to do. And that raises a question in my mind. What if Rosie had made her interest clear before the quest? Is there a scenario, is there a set of circumstances under which Sam does not go or feels that he cannot go with Frodo on the quest?
Wow. That's an interesting question. I have to think that the only scenario in which Sam does not go is if he's already got a child at home.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because as we'll see in a moment, having a child at home means he can't leave for a long time.
For very long, yeah.
We know that.
We understand that completely. I'm even thinking when we get to that point, I'm like, 2 weeks, dude. There's no way I'm getting away for 2 weeks with a 6-month-old at home.
Absolutely.
2 days at max, you know?
Yeah. I think that's the situation in which he might not end up going with Frodo. Otherwise, I think he would be very conflicted about it.
Yeah, but he would go.
I think he probably would go.
There's a sense of duty and obligation.
I think so. And I kind of think also just sort of the gender politics of Tolkien's time and the gender politics of the Shire probably mean that his duty to Frodo kind of outweighs.
It's sort of like, Tolkien had just gotten married when he went off to World War I. And so he would have understood that sense of obligation, of duty. The question is whether Sam would have thought that it was that it rose to that equivalence. I almost can imagine, in an ideal world, they're married, they don't have kids yet. Rosie goes with them and stays in Bree after it's attacked and stays safe and then goes back home or something. She's going to go with them to Rivendell, but then it turns out it's too dangerous and she goes home. But how cool would it have been if she was waiting for Sam in Rivendell and they got to journey back with his new wife? I don't know. It's crazy to think that way, but
I don't see that happening. Maybe if
it's not going to happen, but
maybe if they went to Rivendell together, because my first thought was, well, yeah, Sam is actually going to war with Frodo, but you're right. They didn't know that that's what they were going off to do.
No, they think they're going to Rivendell, or actually they think they're only going to Bree at this point.
That's true.
Yeah. He just gets word back to her and says, we can't stay in Bree. We got to go to Rivendell. I'm going to be a while.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Maybe she ends up going with him as far as Bree or as far as Rivendell. And then at that point, Sam decides not to go because he can't go for that long. I don't know, though. I still feel like that at that point, Rivendell is when Sam is called away to war. And I kind of feel like...
And then maybe that's where Rosie stays, and Bilbo sort of takes care of her as like a foster daughter sort of situation. And, well, Sam's off with Frodo. I don't know.
Or she just ends up going back to the Shire, which wouldn't end well.
No.
Because then she'd be living alone as, a wife whose husband isn't there. As opposed to living at home with her dad when all stuff happens with Sharky.
Yeah. Ooh, that's, I hadn't even thought about that, but you're absolutely right. Her on her own instead of with her family. Though I think she might have stayed with her family. She wouldn't have necessarily, we think of ourselves in our culture as, well, if you're married, you're established, you're living on your own. you're not going to live at your parents' house. But if you're a hobbit and you've just gotten married, maybe you do go back and live with your family while your husband's away. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe so. It's an interesting question. I do believe that Sam ultimately would still go with Frodo.
I think so too.
What does Rosie do while she's waiting for him?
Seriously, yeah.
But now that he has finally spoken, he has proposed marriage to Rosie. Now he is catching a little bit of grief from Rosie for wasting the last year.
Wasting.
Again, this is hobbits just kind of having that narrow view of the world, isn't it?
Exactly.
Nothing that happens outside the Shire matters.
Mm.
And then we get the reference to Sam feeling torn in two, which we've alluded to a couple of times already, and we will come back to later in this episode in a key moment between Frodo and Sam, and we'll talk more about it then.
We will. But before we go on, I really want to dive one more time into this narrow view. We've talked about this a lot over the last couple of chapters, that when we talk about the hobbits, we talk about their very limited perspective, their inability to see outside the Shire. And even our beloved Rosie, talks about Sam wasting this year, and he hasn't wasted it all. He's only saved the world,
Right.
So I wanted us to digress a little bit on that.
So early in the story, Frodo and the hobbits encounter Gildor and Glorian at the Woody End. Remember, all the way back in chapter 3 of book 1. And Gildor says something that I think starts to expand Frodo's view a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, granted, when he starts out, he's already a bit more open-minded than other hobbits, and I think that's due in large part to Bilbo's influence.
Yeah.
But he still can't quite conceive the bigger picture this early on in the story.
That's correct. And he laments the danger that the Black Riders present and says that he never expected to meet danger in our own Shire. And I remember this moment because it was really eye-opening at the time. Gildor gently reminds him, but it is not your own Shire. Others dwelt here before hobbits were, and others will dwell here again when hobbits are no more. The wide world is all about you. You can fence yourselves in, but you cannot forever fence it out. And that line there speaks to the Hobbit's view in a huge way.
Absolutely, because that's exactly what we see.
Yeah.
The hobbits don't pay attention to anything that goes on outside the Shire, but the evil and the corruption that's happening in the world outside still comes to the Shire.
See, for example, last chapter. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing. You cannot forever fence it out. You can be isolated. You can think of nothing outside of the borders of your Shire, but that doesn't mean that those things don't exist and that those things won't impact you. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Those things can still be a threat to you. They are still dangerous. And I think what Gildor is trying to tell Frodo, and I think what Tolkien is trying to tell us, is that it's important to know about those things.
Absolutely.
Because they can still impact you, as you said.
100%.
Now, there is one other moment on sort of Frodo's perspective versus other hobbits in the Shire that came to mind as I was preparing for this episode. Back in the Shadow of the Past, once Frodo realized that the ring was what it was, that's when he knew he had to leave the Shire and take it away with him, right? And he said, I should like to save the Shire if I could, though there have been times when I thought the inhabitants too stupid and dull for words, and have felt that an earthquake or an invasion of dragons might be good for them. And let me just say,
wow, yeah,
I feel seen by this.
Yeah.
Like, I totally get it, Frodo.
I
Like,
do.
sometimes you're frustrated by the people around you, the people in your community, the people in your family, whatever it is. And you feel like, man, I wish a little shakeup would happen so they can see what I see.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine how guilty he must have felt.
I know.
For thinking
When he comes
that,
back and finds the
then
Shire.
coming back and seeing, oh,
well, this isn't what I meant.
an invasion, not dragons, but an invasion actually did happen.
Yeah, it did. And that's exactly right. I'm thinking, does he remember that he said this?
I wonder.
Because he has saved the Shire, as we'll find out. Of course, he talks about saving it for the Shire, but not for himself. But yeah, the invasion happened. And it definitely, in a way, I think long-term will prove to be good for the hobbits in the sense that they will learn from this.
And maybe not be quite so naive and let that happen, or doubt their own power, doubt their own ability to deal with something like that.
Well, going back to the text, Frodo doesn't need more explanation from Sam like we all did with the whole spoken thing. He gets it. He knows what
he understands
Sam's
what
saying.
it means. Yeah,
exactly. So he suggests that they get married and move into Bag End as well. I mean, the place is big enough after all. And I'm thinking, really?
Yeah.
Do you know how many kids are going to have, Frodo? I don't know that Bag End is quite big enough.
That is a very good point.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Love it.
But yeah, that is exactly what they do. They get married. The text says they get married in the spring, but the Tale of Years says that it was May 1st. So that's a pretty quick turnaround. Not a lot of time to plan that wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And after they get married, they move into Bag End.
That's right. Now, as an aside, letter 131 is worth looking at here for a quote about these two. Tolkien wrote in that famous letter to Milton Waldman, and if you are playing the Prancing Pony podcast drinking game, it is time to take a sip, that the simple rustic love of Sam and his Rosie, nowhere elaborated, is absolutely essential to the study of his, the chief hero's, character, and to the theme of the relation of ordinary life, breathing, eating, working, begetting, and quests, sacrifice, causes, and the longing for elves and sheer beauty. I love that.
That's cool.
I mean, we use that quote all the time to talk about Sam being the chief hero, but looking at it, setting that part aside and just looking at what he's pointing out,
Talking
how important their love for each other, which is nowhere elaborated, as he points out.
Yeah.
And he's drawing that in comparison to, because he's telling Waldman about the Aragorn Arwen story, and he's saying that is elaborated in this other writing that's not part of the book. Yeah, we don't get anything more on this, but it is essential to understanding Sam and that ordinary life.
Yeah, that juxtaposition between the importance of all these ordinary life things are important. They are just as important as quests and sacrifice and causes. So yeah, what Tolkien's talking about here is the importance of sort of the mundane, the everyday stuff.
That balance.
Even though there are these big theological questions of good and evil and death and immortality and things like that, that need to be dealt with, but still ordinary family life is crucial, and that's really lovely.
Which is why I think he includes, you hit it on the head when he said family life, because he says breathing, eating, working, and begetting, which is an interesting thing to lump in there. And at first I just wanted to make a joke, and then I realized I mean, I could still do that, but I like he's clearly talking about the importance of family life.
Yeah.
And how that is balanced against this desire and need in many ways for the quests and for the sacrifices and the longing for the elves and all of this. And it is, like you said, the mundane and the spectacular.
Yeah.
And how those are both an equal part of Sam's life. It's not either or, it's both and the importance is the same. Yeah.
And some philosopher will have said this better than you or I can, but I mean, I think that is kind of what makes us human, isn't it? It's it's the desire to live your life and be around the people you love and have a family if that's what you want, or, have somebody in your life who's your partner that you share everything with. And also to have these big noble things like dreams and hopes and desires to put some good in the world or take some evil out of the world. And I think that is really kind of what makes us people.
Well said, sir. Well said.
Thank you. Thank you. I try.
We'll come back and hope we say things just as well after the break. All right, well, we'll get back to the Bag End Love Shack in just a minute, but first we want to remind you that there's a lot more talk going on at the Prancing Pony podcast than just us.
That's right. The PPP has an amazing listener community. They're always coming up with great questions and awesome discussions across all of our social media spaces. Check out our common room on Facebook, our dedicated subreddit, Twitter, and more.
Now, on Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony podcast. Follow the page to get the news, but you're going to want to join the group to get involved in some great discussions.
Or if you prefer Reddit, find us there at r/PrancingPonyPod. And on Twitter and Instagram, we're simply at Prancing Pony Pod.
And be sure to get your daily Tolkien content by subscribing to Today's Tolkien Times on YouTube and your favorite podcast apps. It's my short format daily show with everything from Tolkien Tuesdays to Fandom Fridays. Be sure to check it out at youtube.com/@TolkienTimes and follow @TolkienTimes on all your social media. But Sean, it's time for us to get back into the text. Would you pick up shortly after I left off?
All right. Merry and Pippin lived together for some time at Crickhollow, and there was much coming and going between Buckland and Bag End. The two young travelers cut a great dash in the Shire with their songs and their tales and their finery and their wonderful parties. Lordly, folk called them, meaning nothing but good, for it warmed all hearts to see them go riding by with their mail shirts so bright and their shields so splendid, laughing and singing songs of far away. And if they were now large and magnificent, they were unchanged otherwise, unless they were indeed more fair-spoken and more jovial and full of merriment than ever before. Frodo and Sam, however, went back to ordinary attire, except that when there was need, they both wore long gray cloaks, finely woven and clasped at the throat with beautiful brooches. And Mr. Frodo wore always a white jewel on a chain that he often would finger. All things now went well, with hope always of becoming still better, and Sam was as busy and as full of delight as even a hobbit could wish. Nothing for him marred that whole year, except for some vague anxiety about his master. Frodo dropped quietly out of all the doings of the Shire, and Sam was pained to notice how little honor he had in his own country. Few people knew or wanted to know about his deeds and adventures. Their admiration and respect were given mostly to Mr. Meriadoc and Mr. Peregrine, and, if Sam had known it, to himself.
There's a lot there to unpack, folks. I'm looking forward to this. This is one of those weird episodes. I remember when I was kind of breaking down the readings. They're much shorter than usual, but because there's a lot more density there than you think. And I'm looking forward to talking through this one. So in the bit that we skipped, we get this glimpse into Frodo's life after all the repairs have been done around the Shire.
And he's looked after well by Sam and just kind of retires into sort of a quiet life, mostly writing, really.
Yeah. Must be nice is what I think. I mean,
I know, sounds great, actually.
Except for the PTSD and all the other problems that he's suffering from, it's
all
it's
that stuff. But hey, just being able to sit down and write,
I know,
sounds wonderful.
And not have to worry about taking care of anything, having somebody basically cook your meals and do your laundry and keep your house clean. And yeah. So, Frodo steps down from the temporary spot as deputy mayor so that old Flower Dumpling gets another term. And I got to tell you, I'm thinking old Flower Dumpling sent a couple of guys over and said, Frodo, it's time for you to step down as deputy mayor. That guy's a political machine.
I bet he did.
Some hobbit named Guido. I mean,
you're going to wake up to find something in your bed. Something you didn't want to find.
A pony head.
A pony head. So back to what we did read. Now we get an update on Merry and Pippin.
Yeah.
They're roommates now, living out at Crick Hollow at the house where Frodo had originally moved way back at the beginning of the book.
Exactly, which means they're over in Merry's territory, right, in Buckland.
That's right, yeah.
And they are said to cut a great dash. Now, again, context, you probably can kind of figure it out, but it does mean that they have a stylish and attractive appearance, or a rather bold manner, or at the very least to give a conspicuous impression. Some of those things apply to us, right? I mean, conspicuous, I think, is pretty clear.
I don't know about a stylish and attractive appearance, but a bold manner, certainly.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious when we're present, yeah.
But that certainly tracks, right? I mean, Merry and Pippin, they're wearing the fine clothes and the mail shirts, singing and telling stories of their adventures far away. I mean, remember, these guys were always the life of the party before, and they're even more so now because they're way cooler than they were and way taller than they were.
Way taller, yeah.
And I love this because we're told exactly that. They are still who they've always been, but they are taller and they're a little happier too.
Yeah, I like that. I especially like that. Frodo and Sam, it doesn't say that they're not happier, but it does say that they've sort of gone that opposite direction, right? They're not flashy. They're not boisterous. They're not attention-getting.
Yeah.
Though they sometimes do wear their cloaks. Now, those are those cloaks, right? I mean, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say Galadriel's cloaks, but that's got to be what he's talking about here.
I think so. I think it doesn't say Galadriel's cloaks because this is kind of from the point of view of the other hobbits who wouldn't know.
Exactly. It's Shire perspective.
Yeah.
Because we also talk about the jewel that Frodo fingers is not, mentioned as the jewel that Arwen gave him.
Right. It's just what people see.
Yeah.
Of, he's got this cool jewel and he's got this nice gray cloak.
He's got a cloak with a brooch. Yeah.
I think these are the Lorien cloaks. I've always interpreted them as that.
Yeah, always.
It is interesting. I mean, why do you think Frodo and Sam just go the opposite direction? Why don't you think? I mean, I have thoughts on it, but why do you think that they just kind of go back to their old humble selves?
think for Sam, I think might be different reasons for both of them. I mean, for Sam, he's always been a homebody. That's who he is. I mean, even in the climb up to the top of Mount Doom, when Frodo was just beyond everything, he couldn't remember the Shire, right? All he had was the Wheel of Fire. Sam, on the other hand, was remembering putting his toes in the Bywater pool, and he was remembering his time with the Cotton Kids. And for him, the Shire holds a place that's even different than it is for Frodo. I mean, Frodo wants to save the Shire, but for him, it felt a bit nebulous in a way, because I mean, this is a guy who, even from the very beginning, wanted to go off with Bilbo and adventures and go other places. Sam never wanted to do that. That's right. Like, are you kidding me? Right. Sam is very stereotypically Hobbit, definitely has that, or certainly had that narrow view originally. So I think for him, it's just more a matter of going back to normal. And in his case, normal is taking care of his master and now being married to Rose.
And just settling back into simple Hobbit life, simple Hobbit clothes, simple Hobbit food.
Yeah, very much so.
And goodness knows the gaffer would make faces at him if he dressed like Merry and Pippin are dressing.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's happened with his waistcoat. I don't go for wearing no ironmonger.
Right.
Shut up, Dad. So, Frodo, I think, prefers flying under the radar. He doesn't want to have to relive this. I mean, think about the experiences of war veterans, and think about specifically if you knew anybody who served in World War II. They didn't necessarily want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And if they did, they spoke in pretty general terms. And I think Frodo is in that similar kind of situation. He doesn't want to attract attention. He doesn't want to tell his story. He's perfectly happy flying low and trying to return to something comforting, something normal. And as we'll find out, he never can, not here. This is no longer for him. But I think he's still trying to find that. And for him, it means doing so quietly and privately.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I mean, you mentioned World War II veterans experience. I think World War I veterans too. And I think
it's just that you and I don't know anybody who fought in World War I. We're old, but we're not that old.
But I remember reading about Tolkien's own experience and how he never wanted to talk about his experience in the war.
I think now that I think about it, I think even Simon Tolkien told us that when we had him on way back then. Yeah.
I think you're right. Yeah. So there could be something of that. He doesn't want to relive it. He doesn't.
Yeah.
For him, going and coming back was not this grand adventure where he met kings and became a squire or, a friend of the King of Gondor. I mean, he did become a friend of the King of Gondor.
Yeah, all of those things are still true of him too. But
that wasn't what it was for him, the way it was for Merry and Pippin. For him, it was deeply traumatic. And I think you're right. He doesn't want to relive it.
Yeah.
I also like to think that maybe he's kind of evolving past such worldly things at this point anyway. He is really becoming more of a spiritual person, and he is living this sort of
more elf-like in a way.
Yeah. And even almost like kind of like a monastic life almost, where he's just a life of seclusion and contemplation. Although I guess he's mostly contemplating his own trauma, but he is living just a simpler life in that sense, because he just has no need for such things.
I think you might have a very good point there, actually. Yeah.
But he did wear that jewel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The hobbits didn't know this, as we were just talking about, but we know that's the jewel that Arwen said would bring him aid when the memory of the fear and the darkness troubles him.
I love that foresight from Arwen, because it's not vague at all. She makes it very clear. The memory of the fear, the trauma that you experienced will come back to you in the form of fear and darkness. And when that happens, this jewel will bring you aid. It will help you. Yeah.
Yeah. She knew that he was going to need that. Mm-hmm. And so here he is. And though the circumstances suggest that, everything is good and everything is getting better, and Sam is as happy as a hobbit can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But still, there is something very deeply wrong with Frodo.
Before I go on, I want to point out how much I love that sentence about how things went well. I love all things now went well, with hope always of becoming still better. That's a great line. I hope that when somebody asks me how I'm doing, all things are going well, with hope always of becoming still better.
I like that.
What an answer, right?
What a great way to be able to answer that question.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It really is. So there is something wrong with Frodo, and Sam has this sort of unidentified worry about him. He's he's withdrawn from the Shire's happenings, right? I mean, obviously he's not deputy mayor anymore, but it's more than just that. I'm thinking back all the way to season 1 when we talked about the sins of Melkor and we talked about Feanor sort of duplicating them. Isolation and withdrawal from community is a bad thing. That came to mind, but I have to say here, I don't think it's voluntary. I don't think he's choosing to do that. I think it's sort of a side effect of his trauma and his experience. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit. Like, what do you think in comparison to those other moments that we identified as being negative?
Yeah, that's a good question. I agree it's not entirely voluntary. I mean, it's voluntary, but it's necessary for his emotional survival, right? He's not doing it for the reason Melkor or Feanor did. Melkor or Feanor did it because they thought they knew.
Yeah.
They thought they knew better than other people around them.
Exactly.
They thought that their way of thinking or their course of action or whatever it was in different cases, they thought that they were right and others were wrong. And so they withdrew the voices that would convince them otherwise. It's not to the degree where Feanor takes it, where I'm remembering back in the Silmarillion episodes, we talked about Olwe trying to counsel Feanor not to do what he's about to do as he's leaving Valinor. And Feanor responds by killing a whole bunch of Teleri, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's not that extreme, but I think there's a similar thing that happens early on in Feanor's life where people are telling him not to do the things that he's doing, and he just doesn't want to listen to them.
Right.
Just like he doesn't want to listen to Olwe later on. And I think that is partly what's driving Feanor's withdrawal from his community. And I think that's also probably what's driving Melkor's withdrawal from his community, is that he wants to be alone with his knowledge that what he's doing is right. And he doesn't want to listen to dissenting voices because he's not interested in that.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Frodo's not experiencing that. That's not his intention here. This is healing.
Right. He's not withdrawing to avoid dissenting opinions about some course of action he's chosen. He's withdrawing voluntarily, but he's withdrawing because he needs to for that healing.
Yeah.
It does beg the question of whether maybe Merry and Pippin, and probably not Sam so much because he understands Frodo's trauma more, but would Merry and Pippin be those friends who come to a depressed person and say, oh, come on, just come out, just come to the party with us, come hang out with us, when that's really not what the depressed person needs. I don't know. I mean, I think sometimes friends do that to you when you're in that situation, and sometimes they're not paying attention to what you need.
I can see Pippin doing that. I think Merry's got a little more wisdom.
Merry's probably a little wiser than that.
Yeah. I think that just comes with age a little bit. I mean, Pippin being still so young might be the one to say something like that, but Merry might know better.
Yeah.
Yeah, they know him pretty well now, though. They know what he's experienced. They were certainly with him as he was loath to cross the Ford of Bruinen, as we'll get to that moment again.
True.
And so they know that he's going through some stuff. But yeah, I can see them still being a little bit, maybe playfully trying to get him out when that isn't what he needs.
Probably wanting to just help him re-engage.
Purely good motivation.
And I think a lot of times people do that. People have good intentions.
Yeah.
But sometimes a person who's just going through some stuff just needs that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And Frodo does. And Frodo's going to need more than time, as we'll get to understand through the rest of this episode and next.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam is very perceptive here. And Sam notices that Frodo isn't even really being honored here in the Shire.
No.
People, hobbits, I should say, they're seeing Merry and Pippin as the heroes, because Merry and Pippin are the ones who are acting like conquering heroes, returning after, their exploits beyond. And hobbits don't even really want to know about what Frodo and Sam did. They don't, and probably because Frodo is not acting in a way that is outwardly heroic.
Right. And it has no significance for them. I mean, Merry and Pippin, especially Merry, was the leader of this fight to get Sharky and his men out.
So he is very much the hero of the Shire at this point. Yeah. And of course, the hobbits also see Sam as a hero too, but Sam doesn't realize this.
No.
We're seeing this from Sam's perspective. So only the omniscient narrator can tell us, like, hey, if Sam had only known, he's viewed as one of the heroes too. He's just not swaggering it quite as much.
Swagger it, my little
cock-a-whoop.
Now, in the drafts where Frodo had been more of a military leader, we talked about that last chapter where really a lot of his leadership role was transferred to Merry in stages between the drafts and the final. But when Frodo had been the leader, this part is different. We actually read, "And so the year drew to its end. Even Sam could find no fault with Frodo's fame and honor in his own country. The Tooks were too secure in their traditional position, and after all, their folkland was the only one that had never given in to the ruffians, and also too generous to be really jealous. Yet it was plain that the name of Baggins would become the most famous in Hobbit history." Very different reading, huh?
Boy, that is a complete difference from what we see here.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting. And I'm glad that Tolkien went where he did. I feel like it's a sorrowful ending, but it's certainly the more right ending.
It's more poignant.
It is poignant, and it's what is far more likely to have actually taken place.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Well, I think this is a good point to go back to what we mentioned earlier when Frodo was stricken ill at the time of the anniversary of Shelob's attack, and that all was dark and empty comment that he made. Seeing that Frodo has pulled back in this way from life in the Shire, from the place and the people and the culture that he set out to save, it is a sorrowful sight.
Yeah.
To see him not be able to experience the joy that his people are experiencing.
Yeah.
But this is something that Tolkien talked about at length in one of his letters. This is letter number 246 to Eileen Elgar.
Yeah. Now, we've looked at this letter before. It's the one that talks about Frodo having failed in his quest, with Tolkien explaining at length that, look, this was not a moral failure. The ring would have been impossible for anyone to resist under those circumstances.
That's right. And you also looked at this letter back in Many Partings when Arwen gave him the jewel that he keeps on handling, because he writes, Frodo thought that he had given his life in sacrifice. He expected to die very soon, but he did not, and one could observe the disquiet growing in him. Arwen was the first to observe the signs and gave him her jewel for comfort and thought of a way of healing him.
I remember that. And it's right after that line that we spoke about at length a few episodes back, where Tolkien directly addresses this moment. He says, slowly he, meaning Frodo, fades out of the picture, saying and doing less and less. I think it is clear, Tolkien writes. So if he says that, we better pay attention. It is clear on reflection to an attentive reader that when his dark times came upon him, and he was conscious of being wounded by knife, sting, and tooth, and a long burden, it was not only nightmare memories of past horrors that afflicted him, but also unreasoning self-reproach. He saw himself and all that he had done as a broken failure. Wow. That's deep. So he feels the sense of, like, I failed. I didn't accomplish this.
The trauma of all the wounds that I received and the knowledge that I didn't even accomplish the quest myself.
Right.
Wow.
That would weigh heavy.
It absolutely would.
No wonder he doesn't feel like a hero. I didn't do anything. I stood there and claimed the ring. Gollum bit it off my finger and fell in.
Yeah. And just the regret that you would experience for the rest of your life.
Of all of that effort, and it still wasn't up to me. Because, of course, he doesn't have the perspective that we have to be able to look back and go, nobody could have done this, dude. Don't.
Right. And that it wasn't a moral failure.
No.
Tolkien knows that it wasn't a moral failure, and he tells us that it wasn't a moral failure.
Right.
Frodo doesn't know that. He feels like it was his own moral failure.
Mm-hmm.
Tolkien continues with this. He says that Frodo suffered from a last flicker of pride, desire to have returned as a hero, not content with being a mere instrument of good. And it was mixed with another temptation, blacker and yet, in a sense, more merited, for however that may be explained, he had not, in fact, cast away the ring by a voluntary act.
Yeah.
He was tempted to regret its destruction and still to desire it. It is gone forever, and now all is dark and empty, he said as he wakened from his sickness in 1420. So that goes back to the moment we looked at earlier in this episode. He still has a desire for the ring, and he is feeling self-reproach because he didn't voluntarily throw it in the fire, mixed with this desire and mixed with this want to be a hero. And just there's like multiple things weighing on him here. This feeling of failure, this wish it had turned out differently and I could be a hero, or I could feel like a hero, and the feeling like it's his own fault. And then mixed with that, gee, I sure wish I still had the ring.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking when you think about all these things weighing on him.
And you've got to imagine that the moment he feels that compulsion or desire, that hunger for the ring that's gone, he then also realizes how wrong it is to feel that. He's got to feel conflicted about that. And you combine that with, I didn't destroy it and it's gone forever. And, oh man, the burden that is weighing on him is growing by the day.
Yeah. And, I've often compared Eärendil to Frodo, just because I like talking about Eärendil.
Well, I was
but also
for anybody to Eärendil.
Right. But because Eärendil has, on the surface, it's a similar accomplishment of his quest and then not being able to return home, right? He can't go back to Beleriand after all of that. He has to stay in the skies. But it is very different from what Frodo experiences. And the comparisons, though I myself have made the comparison, you can't go too far with that, because whereas Eärendil actually succeeds in his quest, yes, he can't go back home, but, you know, hey, you're a star. That's pretty cool.
It's still a promotion.
It's a promotion. Absolutely. It's a reward for your successful accomplishment of the quest. Frodo feels like he did not accomplish the quest, and he feels like it's his own moral failing that forced it. And
yet he will be rewarded in the sense that he does get to go to Valinor for healing. So very much like Eärendil,
the reward is being delayed at this point. And so when we see him in this, you know, this liminal space between the failure and the reward that he does deserve, he's miserable.
Oh, he is. And it really just makes your heart hurt for what he's enduring. And the complications, the layers there of guilt and regret, of obviously trauma as well, but also just that self-reproach. Man, Frodo's going through a lot.
You just want to give him a hug.
You do. You done good, Frodo. You done good. Don't worry about it.
You did the best that anyone could have done.
Better than anybody else could have done.
Nobody else would have gotten that far.
Yeah. Anybody else with more inherent natural power or strength would have given in sooner to try to take the ring by force. Anybody weaker would have failed far before Frodo did.
Right.
100%. Man.
All right. Well, let's get back to the text. And Alan, you're going to read the next passage for us.
Well, of course I will. We'll see.
Of course you got this one.
That's right. Also in the autumn, there appeared a shadow of old troubles. One evening, Sam came into the study and found his master looking very strange. He was very pale, and his eyes seemed to see things far away. "What's the matter, Mr. Frodo?" said Sam. "I am wounded," he answered. "Wounded. It will never really heal." But then he got up, and the turn seemed to pass, and he was quite himself the next day. It was not until afterwards that Sam recalled that the date was October the 6th. 2 years before, on that day, it was dark in the dell under Weathertop. Time went on, and 1421 came in. Frodo was ill again in March, but with a great effort he concealed it, for Sam had other things to think about. The first of Sam and Rosie's children was born on the 25th of March, a date that Sam noted. "Well, Mr. Frodo," he said, "I'm in a bit of a fix. Rose and me had settled to call him Frodo, with your leave. But it's not him, it's her. Though as pretty a maid child as anyone could hope for, taking after Rose more than me, luckily. So we don't know what to do." "Well, Sam," said Frodo, "what's wrong with the old customs? Choose a flower name like Rose. Half the maid children in the Shire are called by such names, and what could be better?" "I suppose you're right, Mr. Frodo," said Sam. "I've heard some beautiful names on my travels, but I suppose they're a bit too grand for daily wear and tear, as you might say. The gaffer, he says, make it short, and then you won't have to cut it short before you can use it. But if it's to be a flower name, then I don't trouble about the length. It must be a beautiful flower, because, you see, I think she is very beautiful, and is going to be beautifuler still." Frodo thought for a moment. "Well, Sam, what about Eleanor, the sun star? You remember the little golden flower in the grass of Lothlorien?" "You're right again, Mr. Frodo," said Sam, delighted. "That's what I wanted." Oh, man.
Aw.
Love that.
All right. Well, we get another moment now at the start of this. Not quite like the Farmer Cotton moment where he finds Frodo ill, but it's another moment where the text says that there's a shadow of old troubles, right? Sam discovers Frodo looking distant and pale, his eyes kind of like seeing things far away. I kind of love that.
Yeah, what a visual that is.
Yeah. And Sam asks Frodo what's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, Frodo says, "Look, I'm wounded. That wound's never going to heal." But that moment really takes us back to the moment when Gandalf and the hobbits left Rivendell for Bree. As they came to the fort of Bruinen, we saw something very similar. We read that Frodo seemed loath to ride into the stream, and they noted that for a while his eyes appeared not to see them or things about him. All that day he was silent. It was the 6th of October.
And Gandalf is rightly concerned. and he inquires, and Frodo says that his shoulder hurts. The wound aches, and the memory of darkness is heavy on me. Gandalf famously laments that there are some wounds that cannot be wholly cured.
So Frodo says something then that you and I are going to look much more closely at during this episode and next, especially, even though he said it back then. He said to Gandalf, "There is no real going back. Though I may come to the Shire, it will not seem the same, for I shall not be the same. I am wounded with knife, sting, and tooth, and a long burden. Where shall I find rest?" And that question is the very answer to this chapter. And it's not something that at this point Frodo understands or can conceive. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so hard.
Or knows that is coming for him.
Right.
Yeah.
He doesn't know. We're in that, as you called it, a liminal space between what he perceives as his failure in the quest and the reward for what really was actually a success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then coming back into this timeline, by the next day, he seems fine.
Yeah.
And that takes us back to October 6th, the year before, as they cross the ford, where by the end of the next day, the pain and unease had passed, and Frodo was merry again, as merry as if he did not remember the blackness of the day before.
Just like this time. Yeah.
And speaking of October 6th, it's only later, with the benefit of hindsight, that Sam realizes that this shadow of old troubles appeared on October 6th, which is 2 years to the day after the attack on Weathertop.
Yeah. And dates and seasons, like we've talked about before, right? And we see another one of those coming up. 1421, a repeat of Frodo being ill again in March. It doesn't say in the text that it's the 13th, but if you look at the Tale of Years, that confirms this was March 13th, just like last year. This is stuff that Tolkien just drives home over and over again, the importance of the dates in the calendar. Yeah.
Yeah. And these anniversaries of Frodo's trauma, just feeling, not just remembering, but actually feeling the pain again of these traumatic things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, this time we read that with a great effort, he concealed it for Sam's benefit.
He did that before too, right? You know, he sort of, I forgot the exact phrase, but there was something that implied that he didn't say anything about himself. It was when Sam came back, he didn't tell Sam, "Oh, by the way, I was sick while you were gone," right?
Right. That's true. Yeah. And this happens a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When people who are struggling through something, some trauma or some deep depression or things like that, sometimes people do feel like they need to try and hide it for others' sakes, or they choose to hide it for others' sakes.
I mean, maybe because they don't want to share it, because they don't want to, necessarily talk about it. But the text here says it's for Sam's benefit. I feel like sometimes that's the thing. Like, we know when we're going through a hard time, keep it to myself because I don't want to burden somebody else.
Yeah. And don't want to get in the way of his happiness or something like that.
Especially right now. I mean, look at all that Sam's doing, and I don't want to be the wet blanket that brings him down.
Right.
And yet I'm sure it would do him well to be able to talk through some of these things.
It would. And I'm sure Sam would be too happy
100%.
to just talk to him about it and be there for him.
I know.
But it's true. I mean, Sam is a bit busy, right? Rosie is very pregnant with their first child.
Yeah.
And that child is going to end up being born on March 25th, again, with the importance of dates, because, of course, now this would be March 25th, year 1421 of the Shire Reckoning, which is 3021 of the Third Age Reckoning. And on this date in the Tale of Years, we see two things, one of which is the birth of Eleanor the Fair, daughter of Samwise.
That's right.
But
we do see something else, too, and that is that on this day, the Fourth Age began in the Reckoning of Gondor. Happy birthday, Eleanor. The entire calendar of Gondor revolves around you.
New Year's babies.
That's right. Sticking with the calendar thing for a second, and don't worry, we'll get back to Eleanor soon enough, I promise. We also read in Appendix D that the Fourth Age was held to have begun with the departure of Master Elrond, which has not yet happened, which took place in September 3021. Spoilers, I guess. But for the purposes of record in the kingdom, Fourth Age 1 was the year that began according to the new reckoning in March 25th, 3021 Old Style. So again, the importance of dates, March 25th being the date of the fall of Barad-dûr, and also the date of the birth of Eleanor 2 years later. It's just really significant. So yeah, she was going to be born not even 2 weeks after Frodo was sick. So I can see now why Frodo was maybe hesitant to talk about it with all the Sam.
I mean, Rosie was ready to pop, basically.
She really was. Yeah. Any day now. Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit more about Sam and Rosie's first child, and not yet called Eleanor, because Sam has a little problem, right?
That's
and
right.
That's what we're going to talk about. He actually comes to Frodo admittedly in a little bit of a bind. He says, we were going to name our son Frodo, with your permission, of course, but it's a girl, and Frodo would be an odd name for a girl.
Yes, it would. And frankly, I'm glad this didn't happen while they were living at Bag End. Can you imagine how many times Sam or Rose would call out Frodo and have to say, no, not you, old man? I mean, it's just confusing to have two Frodos living in the same house. So probably
he'd have
just
to have a
well.
nickname, like,
call him by his middle name.
Or just a nickname, Frodito.
Frodito.
Lil Frody. I don't know, something.
Oh, man. I love that. Frodito. That's great.
But it doesn't happen. They end up having a daughter, not a son.
Yeah.
This is great. She's really pretty. She takes after her mom. That is.
Doesn't look like me.
She doesn't look like me.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
How many times have I said that about my own
Seriously. It's like, my son's handsome. That's right. He has none of my DNA. That's why.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right for you. Sure.
0.
Right. With my kids, I just say both of them. They just take after their mom. That's why they look so
exactly.
Good. But anyway, she's born. She's beautiful. And now we're stuck for a name.
Yeah.
Frodo here just kind of gives the stock advice I'd probably give. Is just like, just stick with tradition. Give her a flower name. That's what hobbits do for girls, right? Yeah. They give them flower names. Do that, and it'll all be just fine.
Exactly. Even suggests Rose, which, by the way, is the next name in the list that we looked at during last week's mailbag question. So we do get the next name on the list. Yeah.
That's right. And Sam doesn't disagree with this, but he does digress a bit because he starts thinking about all the beautiful and high names that he's come across during their adventures. But he recognizes that these are not useful daily hobbit names. So he doesn't feel like Galadriel or Éowyn or Arwen. He doesn't think of these as being appropriate names for a simple hobbit child.
No. And after all, whatever the name is, it's got to pass the gaffer's standards, right? Sam will never hear the end of it if he names his daughter, Galadriel Arwen Gamgee. That's just not going to fly,
Right.
And we get another of the gaffer's words of wisdom, right? Make it short so you don't have to cut it short later. He's not wrong. I mean,
No, that's true. Honestly, yeah, I get that.
There's some simplicity to it.
That was one of the rules we followed in naming our kids. We didn't,
Too many syllables, we gotta cut the limit somewhere.
Right. So Sam goes back to the idea of flower names, and he actually says he doesn't care what his dad thinks. Long actually is fine.
That's right.
But it needs to be a beautiful flower, and his reasoning for this is great.
It is so beautiful. I think she is very beautiful and is going to be beautifuler still. And I know I'm speaking for you as well when I say I thought that about my daughter when she was born.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I have to say, though, it's a good thing that he didn't come across some other high names for trees and flowers and things. I'm thinking of the names of the fragrant trees in Númenor. Name his daughter Oyalaire, Lairolosse, Vardariana, some other Quenya name plant.
I love that.
Those would work, but they're a little complicated.
Vardariana, that actually sounds like a name.
It does.
But he'd have to short it to Varda, which would be kind of funny.
Which is a little...
maybe a touch sacrilegious. I don't know.
Just a bit. Yeah. I do love that.
Oh, man. So Frodo, ever the problem solver, suggests, well, what about Eleanor?
Mm-hmm.
Remember Eleanor, the sun star, the little golden flower in the grass of Lothlorien.
Oh.
And Sam is blown away by this suggestion.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
he says the name is perfect. And I think he's absolutely right. I mean,
he is.
It truly is a perfect name for Sam's first daughter for reasons that the hobbits have just discussed, but I think are worth pausing to, take some time on it point by point. Eleanor is a flower name.
Right.
In Middle-earth. I mean, we talked long ago about the actual derivation of the real world name Eleanor, but in Middle-earth, Eleanor is a flower name, but it's also a beautiful name that Sam heard on his travels.
Yeah.
So it kind of fits both of the criteria that they're looking at
Exactly.
Here. Yeah. In doing both of those things, it ends up being higher than an ordinary hobbit flower name. It's not a common flower like rose or lily, and so it's kind of higher in that sense than an ordinary hobbit girl's name. But it's also more down to earth than Galadriel, Arwen, Éowyn, Tenuviel, Vardariana,
Vardariana.
And so it kind of exists between both worlds, right?
Yeah.
And that's how Sam himself is.
Ooh.
Sam has a foot in the ordinary world of hobbits, and he also has a foot in the epic world.
He sure does.
That's outside.
It kind of goes back to that quote that we read earlier about, the balance of the ordinary, right? The breathing, eating, working, begetting, and then the longing for elves and sheer beauty. This really actually implements both of those.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a good point. I like that. It's a very pretty name, obviously.
Obviously you like it.
Yeah. Our daughter is named Eleanor, and for this exact reason, after Sam's daughter. And, it's nice because it's a high name without being, with being more down to earth than naming our daughter Eowyn or Arwen or something like that.
Right.
No disrespect meant to those who have the courage to name their children those names. I'm just saying,
think that's awesome.
Yeah, we wanted a name that was going to sound stealthy and normal.
It's a real world name.
Yeah. It's just a different spelling.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Most importantly, though, within Middle-earth,
yeah,
Eleanor is a name that only Sam could come up with as a hobbit who has lived in both worlds.
Yeah.
I would assume that Eleanor is going to become a popular name for hobbit girls after this. I'm sure for centuries after, because of the great things Sam is going to do in the Shire.
And the great things Eleanor will do. Yeah.
And the great things Eleanor will do. People will name girls Eleanor in the Shire after this. But it should not have been a common name before this.
It shouldn't have existed as a name before this.
It shouldn't have existed as a name for a hobbit girl before this. And I'm looking at you, Rings of Power writers.
Yeah.
This was something that I have struggled with that show, is their choice to name a character Eleanor, which I don't think makes any sense. And I think it diminishes the power of this name, this act of naming that Sam.
The act of naming. I like the way you put that. Yeah. Similar to the way that the storyline in The Hobbit with the Hobbit films with Keely and Tauriel sort of cheapened the friendship and relationship between Legolas and Gimli. Made it feel like, oh, okay, well, I guess anytime an elf and a dwarf can,
Right.
And anybody can name their kid Eleanor after a flower that nobody else knew existed until this story with Sam. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. It just doesn't make any sense.
No, it does not.
I'm not here to pick apart that show.
That's a bugaboo. That's a fair bugaboo. No doubt about it. Yeah. 100%. Yep. All right. Well, before we spend the next half hour finding other things to complain about, Sean, would you?
Sorry.
No, it's all
You knew
good.
This was going to happen when I came back on the show.
Because you're right. But before we do go off on that tangent, how about you go ahead and read the next passage for us?
All right. Little Eleanor was nearly 6 months old, and 1421 had passed to its autumn when Frodo called Sam into the study. "It will be Bilbo's birthday on Thursday, Sam," he said. "And he will pass the old Took. He will be 131. "So he will," said Sam. "He's a marvel." "Well, Sam," said Frodo, "I want you to see Rose and find out if she can spare you, so that you and I can go off together. You can't go far, or for a long time now, of course," he said a little wistfully. "Well, not very well, Mr. Frodo." "Of course not. But never mind, you can see me on my way. Tell Rose that you won't be away very long. Not more than a fortnight, and you'll come back quite safe." "I wish I could go all the way with you to Rivendell, Mr. Frodo, and see Mr. Bilbo," said Sam. "And yet the only place I really want to be in is here. I am that torn in two." "Poor Sam. It will feel like that, I am afraid," said Frodo. "But you will be healed. You were meant to be solid and whole, and you will be."
Wow. Thank you, Sean. That last paragraph always hits hard, and we'll get to that. But coming back to the beginning of the passage, we fast forward again now almost 6 months to sometime right before September 22nd, based on what they're talking about and the fact that a couple days pass. I want to say it's like probably the 18th or 19th, maybe.
Something like that.
And we know that because Frodo says it's going to be Bilbo's birthday on Thursday. And of course, Bilbo's birthday is September 22nd.
That's right. And so is Frodo's. But
that's right.
But he doesn't make any mention of his own birthday here.
No, not at all.
And that's important because he's really trying to keep the attention on Bilbo and the fact that Bilbo is passing the old Took as he reaches the age of 131.
Assuming he makes it to Thursday. I mean, to try not to be grim. Remember, the old Took was Bilbo's grandfather.
Borrowed time at this point. So, yeah.
Exactly. Every day, man. You're just like... Remember that the old Took was Bilbo's grandfather. So, Bilbo was the son of Belladonna Took, the 9th of 12 children of Gerontius Took and Adamanta Chubb. So while we can certainly credit the ring for some of Bilbo's apparent agelessness, right? The fact that he still looked very much the same and all of that, the youthful appearance, his genetics clearly played a part, a very large part in him reaching this age.
Certainly. Yeah. And now Frodo has a favor to ask.
Yeah.
He wants Sam to ask and see if Rose can do without him for a couple of weeks so that we can go together for a bit.
I'm trying to think how well that would go over, Sean. I mean,
so wait, hey, you were with him for a year and you want to go away again?
Yeah, exactly.
For 2 weeks?
Our child is 6 months old and you want to go away for a 2-week camping trip?
When my son was 6 months old, I had to go on a business trip for like a weekend.
Yeah.
And I remember how hard it was for my wife. I mean, phone calls. I mean, our son was a bad sleeper and I was getting phone calls from my wife late at night, just, it was rough on her.
I bet. Yeah.
I can't imagine 2 weeks.
No, I can't either. I mean, even when I'm gone now, even though they're older, even when I'm gone for like 5 days for, Mythmoot or Oxymoot or something, it's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm thinking 2 weeks, man. Interestingly, though, we see from Sam's response that he thinks he's going to accompany Frodo part of the way to Rivendell to go see Bilbo.
And that makes sense after all, because Sam doesn't know anything about the words that Elrond spoke to Frodo back when he left Rivendell, which would have been now like nearly 2 years ago.
My goodness, yeah.
As Frodo stood upon the threshold, Elrond wished him a fair journey and blessed him. And he said, I think, Frodo, that maybe you will not need to come back, unless you come very soon. For about this time of year, when the leaves are gold before they fall, look for Bilbo in the woods of the Shire. I shall be with him. These words no one else heard, and Frodo kept them to himself.
Which explains why Sam never knew about that. Yeah.
Right.
However, I will say that Elrond's comments there, Elrond's statement to Frodo, begged the question then, and it still begs the question, how does Frodo know exactly when and where to meet Elrond, Bilbo, and company? Elrond doesn't say this time in 2 years. He doesn't give a month. He doesn't give a date. He doesn't even give a location. He just says the woods of the Shire.
That is true.
That's pretty vague.
Do you think he sent a letter maybe, or does Frodo just know?
That's the thing. I mean, we've talked before about Frodo possibly having a little bit of foresight.
Yeah.
There's also the possibility, because everybody's mind is default open, there is the possibility that Elrond might have used Osanwe to send him a message. We're on our way. We'll see you in a couple of weeks or whatever.
We know Elrond is good at that.
Elrond's very good at that. And from what I understand, I'm trying to remember Osanwe Kenta, the essay that talks about that. It takes less to be receptive to it and more to send a message. And Frodo might not have the skill to do that, but he would probably receive a message.
If someone very skilled like Elrond, who's very good at sending the message, could do it. Yeah.
The other thing is, like you said, possibly a message. Maybe he'd received a note. I mean, there are things that we aren't told. We're not told everything.
Right.
Like, we're famously unaware of the tax policies of Gondor, So it's certainly clear that we might not get every single piece of mail that Frodo gets.
Right.
But it is interesting, How does he know?
It is. How does he know?
Though I think one would imagine, at least if I'm Frodo and Elrond says, we'll meet you in the woods of the Shire, I'm thinking the woody end where I met Gildor.
That makes sense because we know that elves do pass through there on their way west.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's not like a 5-minute walk from Bag End. So
True.
How does he know when to go meet him? But
right.
Interesting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also, it's worth noting that Sam is actually going to be away for 15 nights.
Oh, my goodness.
So it does end up being a bit more than a fortnight, Frodo.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like Rosie is understanding.
We'll get there.
She seems to know that this is something Sam needs to do. And because
more power
again, we know how hard it is to be alone with your child when they're that young.
6 months, 15 nights away.
It's a long time.
Things that aren't going to happen for 500, Alex. Yeah.
Right.
Not in our world. No. Good for Rosie though, good on her for understanding the significance of this. And I suspect she knows more than we think she might,
Yeah.
Even though she has that narrow perspective being a Shire hobbit through and through, I think she understands how much Sam loves Frodo and needs to do this for him. But we'll get to that next week, right? When we talk about him returning.
We will.
Oh my goodness. What a moment.
I also just dare say that, in the time when Tolkien was writing this, it probably was more common than we realize today. These days, fathers are, I think, rightfully very involved in the raising of their children. And most men I know I like to think all men I know would not even think of doing this to their wives.
No.
With a child at home that young, but
not that young, certainly.
I think this kind of thing probably was more common when Tolkien was writing this, and probably was more part of the world that Tolkien came from.
And like you said before, sort of the gender politics of the Shire, it would have been assumed that Rosie would allow this because she wouldn't have the authority to say no.
Yeah.
She might make Sam feel badly about it, but Sam could still go do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Sam wouldn't if he felt like Rosie didn't want
No,
to.
I think Sam
adores her.
I think Sam is sincerely asking for her permission and blessing to do this.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think she gives it sincerely.
I agree. Now, as for the trip itself, how far, if they were going to Rivendell, right, which is what Sam thinks they are, how far could Sam have gone with Frodo if that's what they were doing? A 14-day round trip would mean a 7-day journey out, so it would take him 7 days to get back. We know that Bree to Rivendell on the way out took them 21 days. Now, they were off-road, but they were also being chased. So, I mean, there's that. On the way back, when they were with Gandalf and they were just taking their time, it was 23 days. They were not in a hurry, which is probably more the pace that I'd imagine they would take. But either way, it's a hair over 3 weeks from Bree to Rivendell. We also know it takes a full day to get from the Brandywine to Bree. That's how long it took them in many partings to get there. And they had to leave Bree very early that morning just to get to the Brandywine gates at night. And it's that same distance of 40 miles from Bag End to Brandywine. So 2, maybe even 3 days to Bree. And then 4 or 5 days past that, maybe 20% of the way from Bree to Rivendell is as far as he gets before he has to turn around. And looking at the map, that might be Amon Sul, maybe, Weathertop, but certainly no further.
Yeah. I also think it was about a month for Bilbo to get to Rivendell, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
In The Hobbit.
Yeah.
He left at the end of April, and I think he got to Rivendell
I think you're right.
At the end of May.
I'd have to double check the dates, but I think you're 100% right. We know it's a long trip. Yeah.
It's a long trip. It's not something you can do in 14 days round trip. Yeah.
No.
And so no wonder that Sam realizes that he couldn't go all the way. I mean, again, we're talking minimum 50-day journey, but probably closer to 2 months, like we were just talking about with the Bilbo calculation.
Bad idea.
That's a long way. That's a long time away.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, though, Frodo does not disabuse Sam of this notion that they're going to Rivendell. He actually allows Sam to think this.
Sort of a lie by omission, but, okay.
Yeah. Instead, we get this bit that I want us to talk about before we move on, which is where Sam says that he wants to go all the way to Rivendell and see Bilbo, but at the same time, the only place he wants to be is here in the Shire with Rosie and Eleanor.
Exactly. It's that torn in two bit that we've been talking about and that we're going to keep talking about. Before we get to that, though, I want to talk about Frodo's response. He has a confidence that Sam is going to be healed. And I want to contrast that with the certainty that Frodo has that he himself will not be healed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the way you read it, I loved it because you said, but you will be healed. You were meant to be solid and whole, and you will be. And that's exactly the way it needed to be read. It's Frodo doesn't believe he is meant to be whole anymore. He doesn't believe that he's going to find healing, but he has confidence that Sam will, and that Sam is meant to be whole and solid and not torn in two, as opposed to himself, who's very much neither solid nor whole.
It's very much a distinction that's in Frodo's mind. And I did read it intentionally that way because that's
well done.
I think that's what he's saying here.
100%.
And I think this is a good place to go back to the passage from Shadow of the Past that we quoted earlier, the one about hobbits being too stupid and dull for words.
That's such a great line. Yeah,
it is. Right after that, Frodo said this. He said, I feel that as long as the Shire lies behind, safe and comfortable, I shall find wandering more bearable. I shall know that somewhere there is a firm foothold, even if my feet cannot stand there again.
Wow. That really does tie in here. I mean, Frodo, as it turns out, will not be able to stand there again, right? He's not going to come back to the same Shire, as he told Gandalf earlier, back at the Fort of Bruin. And if I get back to the Shire, it's not going to be the same Shire because I'm not the same. And yet when he set out, it was the thought that the Shire was there, static, the same, comfortable and safe. I'll be okay because I know.
Knowing that home exists.
Exactly.
Even if you can't go back there. Yeah.
But for Sam, Frodo believes that Sam can absolutely be whole and be healed. It's sad because, like you said, it is a distinction. Frodo doesn't believe for himself that these things are possible, that he can be healed or solid or whole.
Right.
Yeah. That torn in two bit.
The The torn in two bit is really, really striking because he wants to go, but he wants to be with his wife and his daughter. And I totally understand that.
Yeah. This is where he belongs, right? It is his place in the world. And yet he also feels this strong desire to go and to accompany Frodo, number one, but also to see Bilbo. He has a great love for Bilbo as well. Remember, I mean, Bilbo learned him his letters. He's got a great respect for Bilbo.
All those stories that are in his head,
Bilbo
told him,
That's absolutely right. So, of course, he wants to go see Bilbo, and I'm glad he's going to get to. I think that at least is a nice thing. Yeah.
That is a nice thing.
But it is hard.
Going back to Frodo for one more minute, Frodo, we don't really see much of how Frodo's feeling about all this. He has to be feeling some degree of comfort or anticipation. I don't think excitement is the right word.
No.
But he's got to be feeling like there's light coming at the end of the tunnel for him and his pain.
Yeah.
He's starting to feel like, okay, soon I will get a break from all this. Soon I'll get some respite.
When do you think he realized that this was going to be his fate? Like, Arwen said when she handed him that jewel, basically, I'm giving you my seat. And we'll talk more about that, of course. But it was, if you want it, right? It was, in my stead you shall go when the time comes, and if you then desire it. When do you think he realized the time has come? Was it after one of these illnesses?
Probably sometime shortly before this.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm thinking at this point, he knows that he's going away.
Yes, I think you're right. 100%. He knows. Yes.
And maybe that's the answer to the question of how he knows where to meet Elrond is maybe he has received some message that says, okay, we're leaving. This is your chance. Do you want to come?
And
Frodo says, yes, I'm going to come. And okay, now we're going to meet here. So maybe that's it. There was some sort of communication with Elrond. And I think probably not too long before this is when he realized that he was going to go into the West.
No, because I think once he knew he was going to make this journey, he knew he needed to get Sam on board to come with.
Right.
He wouldn't want to delay that because he'd want to give Rose as much heads up as he could.
Right. And he probably also doesn't want to delay it because he wants to let Sam finally cut this loose.
Yes.
I mean, Sam would not see it this way. Sam does not see it that Frodo leaving is the best thing for Sam here because Sam loves Frodo and he wants to be near Frodo.
In a way, he kind of wants to be torn in two, right? He
kind of,
He longs to still have that connection to Frodo, and yet he needs to have that cord cut.
That's exactly right. And I think, and Frodo has the wisdom to know that. And Frodo knows that it is precisely his leaving that is going to allow Sam to become whole and to finally cut that cord, as you said.
To free him and to enable him to be healed and then to be whole and one piece and solid. Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking to think of it that way, but it's absolutely what's going on here. Frodo knows that he has to leave before Sam can be whole.
And there's going to be a lot of tears next week as we read through some of the more emotional stuff as Sam eventually comes to the realization, that Frodo's leaving. We're not getting there tonight, folks, but
no,
a heartbreaking passage when you realize that Sam is coming to that recognition of Frodo's departure.
Yeah.
Man.
But as you said, that'll come next time. And for now, we've got one more passage to read today.
Yeah, it's a short one, folks. In the next day or two, Frodo went through his papers and his writings with Sam, and he handed over his keys. There was a big book with plain red leather covers. Its tall pages were now almost filled. At the beginning, there were many leaves covered with Bilbo's thin, wandering hand, but most of it was written in Frodo's firm, flowing script. It was divided into chapters, but chapter 80 was unfinished, and after that were some blank leaves. The title page had many titles on it, crossed out one after another, so: My Diary, My Unexpected Journey, There and Back Again, and What Happened After. Adventures of 5 Hobbits, The Tale of the Great Ring, compiled by Bilbo Baggins from his own observations and the accounts of his friends. What We Did in the War of the Ring. Here Bilbo's hand ended, and Frodo had written, The Downfall of the Lord of the Rings and the Return of the King, as seen by the little people, being the memoirs of Bilbo and Frodo of the Shire, supplemented by the accounts of their friends and the learning of the wise, together with extracts from books of lore translated by Bilbo in Rivendell. "Why, you have nearly finished it, Mr. Frodo," Sam exclaimed. "Well, you have kept at it, I must say." "I have quite finished, Sam," said Frodo. "The last pages are for you."
All right, well, this short passage stands alone, mostly because of its significance in the frame narrative, and we want to make sure we have a chance to talk through this.
Exactly. So we see that over the next couple of days, between whenever that conversation takes place and the 22nd, that Frodo walks Sam through the things that he's written so far and gives him the keys to Bag End.
Yep, and then we get a description of the book itself. It's a plain red leather cover with tall pages. Some of these pages are written by Bilbo, and then most of them, though, were written by Frodo. And here's where we want to digress a little bit, because we're told that this book is divided into 80 chapters with the last chapter unfinished. Now, this feels pretty significant, so let's dive in a little bit.
Absolutely. So in The Lord of the Rings, we have 6 books. The books have respectively 12, 10, 11, 10, 10, and 9 chapters. Now, in total, that's 62. The Hobbit has 19 chapters. Well, 19 and 62 is 81, not 80.
So this seems like it should be the 81st chapter.
Right, like the 81st chapter. Yeah.
Yeah, not the 80th incomplete chapter. Now, that also doesn't include the prologue, but we can probably consider the prologue Tolkien's work as Tolkien the translator.
Right.
But that still leaves us a chapter off.
Exactly. I mean, like you said, if it was the 81st chapter that was unfinished, that would make sense. But otherwise, maybe we're looking at a book that only gets partway through the scouring, but that doesn't make sense. I mean, Frodo's clearly very involved in that.
Right. And it also doesn't even include Bilbo's translations from the Elvish, right?
Definitely not.
I mean, we're just talking about The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, as we'll see in a moment with the titles of these
That's
works.
right. So when in doubt, then, we go, as we often do, to the history of Middle-earth, and we see what Christopher Tolkien has uncovered about this. And in Sauron Defeated, we read about this part of the story. Christopher explains that the big book with red leather covers is described, without, however, any mention of the title page and the sequence of Bilbo's rejected titles. The writing in the book ended at chapter 77, the number being marked with a query. And that's in the earliest draft.
But then in a footnote, he writes that in the following text, the last unfinished chapter in the Red Book was numbered 72. And on the first typescript, this was changed to 80.
So we went from 77 to 72 to 80. Now, Hammond and Scull also have some thoughts on this, not surprisingly. They point out in their Reader's Companion that it is not clear what Tolkien had in mind, thanks a lot, or if he miscounted, a possibility made more likely by the fact that in draft form, some chapters were conjoined and only later separated. That actually makes a lot of sense.
That makes more sense than anything.
I mean, it really does. How many times did we find that? I mean, we just talked about this last episode. Homeward Bound, Scouring of the Shire, and the Grey Havens, and the epilogue were one chapter.
We're all one chapter, one mega chapter.
Which would have been like, oh, welcome to our 8th of 10 episodes on this last chapter of The Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Hammond and Scull also suggest that maybe the 80 is meant to refer to the original Red Book chapter breaks, but not to the work that Tolkien edited or translated.
Okay.
In fact, Hammond and Scull argue, the source for Tolkien's books is said to be, in the note on the Shire records, to be later copies and extracts, not the actual Red Book begun by Bilbo and Frodo and completed by Sam.
That's right. Well, the epilogue, which is in Sauron Defeated, by the way, also sheds some light on this process. In the second version of the epilogue, Sam tells Elenor that Frodo had left in the final pages, but I have never yet durst to put hand to them. I'm still making notes, as old Mr. Bilbo would have said. And I love this version because after talking about some of his challenges in the story, he's still trying to figure out what happened with Gimli and Legolas. Did they go back to Gondor and all that kind of thing? So he's waiting for updates. Elenor suggests what Sam's chapter should be. Write down our talk together. I love that. It's so cute. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, well, big digression aside, we come back to the titles. They're crossed out one after another. And actually, some of these are pretty good.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the draft also for some real winners here.
Yeah.
Memoirs of an Amateur Burglar in the draft was one of my favorites.
I love that. That's actually the best. That would be my choice as well. I also sort of liked what the Bagginses did in the War of the Ring. I mean, it kind of leaves Sam, Merry, and Pippin on the sidelines, but
thanks a lot.
Thanks, Uncle Bilbo. Yeah.
Yeah. And that might be why after the final title of The Downfall of the Lord of the Rings and The Return of the King in the draft, which is, of course, the title which remained, instead of As Seen by the Little People in the draft, we get the names B and F Baggins, S Gamgee, M Brandybuck, P Took, supplemented by information provided by the wise.
Who are not listed above.
Not named here.
Yeah, so not named.
They're just
the
book. Wise. Yeah. We only care about our names.
That's right. So what do you think, Sean, the extracts from books of lore are?
This is a tough one. I've gone back and forth on this so many times. I mean, it can't be the full volumes of translations from the Elvish. I mean, that would be like the whole Silmarillion plus, right? I mean, that's like way too much information to be in one volume here.
Exactly. And that makes sense because remember when Bilbo gave Frodo those volumes in Rivendell, we're told that they were 3 books of lore that he had made at various times. Right. This is a single volume. So it definitely doesn't include those because he wouldn't have transcribed it. It wouldn't have been in Bilbo's hands. So it would have been in Frodo's hand if he was transcribing all of Bilbo's notes. Right. In the prologue, we're told these translations, the ones that Bilbo gave to Frodo in Rivendell, were, quote, little used by Frodo being almost entirely concerned with the elder days.
So, I mean, I don't know. Is it anything from the appendices? Probably not, because there's really not that much about the elder days in the appendices.
No. I'm wondering if it's just like little segments and things like maybe the song that he sang. Well, no, because that's not a translation. I was thinking about the Song of Eärendil that he sang at in Rivendell, but that's not a translation.
Maybe the Lay of Leithian.
Yeah, yeah, the bit from the Lay of Leithian and some information from that would have related to Aragorn retelling that story.
Maybe the Great Tales in general. Maybe like some of these, like the the Lost Fall of Gondolin.
Maybe a short version of the story of the trees so we can understand the Silmarils and Eärendil.
Maybe so.
Maybe. I don't know. I wish I knew. I wish there was a clear answer to that, but there really isn't. So we apologize in advance.
I know. It's too bad that it's not there. I like to think that at least all 3 of the Great Tales would be represented in there somewhere.
Somehow. But then wouldn't it be even longer? I mean, if most of the book is in Frodo's hand.
Yeah, that's true.
It would have to be smaller segments. But it could be summaries of those, or
it could be like the chapters that are in the Silmarillion, as opposed to like the Children of Húrin.
That's true. It could very well be. Yeah,
maybe it's some of the Silmarillion, but not all of it.
Exactly, extracts from books of lore. So snippets of the Lay of Leithian, snippets of Ainulindale, snippets of the Fall of Gondolin or Turin's.
Yeah, I like that idea. I can get on board with that.
Little highlights, teasers. Yeah.
Now, Sam, who is probably very grateful that he hasn't been left with a ton of work to finish this, he observes that it is almost finished. And boy, Frodo's really kept at it.
I sure has.
You sure have been working hard.
You've been working in retirement.
When you've been locked inside your hole.
Yeah, seriously.
But Frodo makes it clear that he has finished.
I love the way he says that. I am quite finished. And it reminds me of a pair of lines, actually, in my favorite non-legendarium work, Leaf by Niggle. So, of course, anybody familiar with the story, Niggle's been working like crazy on this art, including this tree. And the driver has come. It's time for Niggle to leave. And in the meantime, the authorities are there. They're going to take his painting and use the canvas to patch his neighbor's roof. I mean, he's just watching all of these things fall apart. And as he's having to go, being forced to go, he begins to weep. And he says, "It's not even finished." The driver says, "Not finished? Well, it's finished with, as far as you're concerned, at any rate." And then much later in the story, he encounters the tree. And this time it's the real tree. It's the tree that he envisioned, but there it is in front of him. The tree was finished, though not finished with. Just the other way about to what it used to be, he thought.
Oh, wow. Yeah. A complete contrast from the painting not being finished, but finished with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the tree is finished, but not finished with. That's really cool.
It's so, and I think if I had not read that relatively recently, it might not have triggered it, but that finished line really pulled that back. And I thought, I wonder, it's like there's something there. Frodo is finished with it. Mm-hmm. That is to say, Frodo has finished, but the story is not finished with. And Sam still has a role to play. And, we're going to get to see what Sam puts in that book going forward. Because after this, it's Sam telling the story.
That's right. Frodo's part in the tale is over.
That's right.
Yeah.
So here Frodo's hand ended, and Barlaam had written, The Downfall of the Innkeeper and the Return of the Mailbag. Sean.
That's surprisingly well done, actually.
What does Barlowin have for us today?
All right. Well, like we said last week, all the questions about this chapter are related to the very end of it. But we can't put 3 questions in next week's mailbag.
I mean, we could, but 4-hour episodes are not our forte. We haven't done anything over 3 since season 1.
Right. So last week we talked about Frodo's foresight when it came to the names of Sam's kids, or if foresight it was. So tonight we have another end of the story question. Eric B. writes in saying, I am not sure if this is clear or not in the books. I hope this question is not mundane, but I don't think I have heard it addressed. When Frodo and the clan leave Middle-earth and journey into the West, how are they sure that they will be welcomed?
Who are you and why are you here?
Right. They haven't historically allowed mortals there.
No, that's true. You know. Historically, mortals are buried in the caves of the Forgotten.
Right.
Frodo, meet our Farazan. Our Farazan, Frodo.
Right. You guys will have a lot to talk about until the breaking of the world. And then separately, Eric B. asks, what is thought to come of mortals that reside there?
Now, that is a good question. And it's one that is fairly common. We've seen this question in various forms. And I think before we even get into Frodo being welcomed, let's just say that it's pretty clear that Gandalf will be welcomed because he is a Maya, and the ring bearers themselves, they're all Eldar. They're all elves. So they're going to be welcome. It's welcome. Frodo's arrival. That's the question. Right. And I'm going to take that first part because frankly, it's the easy one. And that's what I like to do. Earlier today, we were talking about that jewel that Arwen gave to Frodo. We referenced letter 246, and I'm going to go back there for our answer. There is a footnote in that letter that explains, or at least makes a clarification attempt as to the how of Frodo getting that seat. Tolkien acknowledges he didn't make it explicit just how Arwen could arrange that sort of deal, like, give him that seat. As he writes, she could not, of course, just transfer her ticket on the boat like that. And thank you, Professor, for making that clear, right? She would at least have had to turn it in for future cruise credit, then give Frodo a redemption code for him to turn in when he ordered his online in a period no less than 90 days forward, but no further than 180 days forward. You have all those restrictions. And I'm sorry, you're still going to have to pay for your seat assignment and your luggage. He goes on, though, Tolkien does, and explains further in the footnote. For any except those of elvish race, sailing west was not permitted, and any exception required authority. And she, talking about Arwen, was not in direct communication with the Valar, especially not since her choice to become mortal, which is like...
They're not taking my calls anymore.
Won't take
I don't know why.
Hello, why won't you pick up?
Manway?
Exactly.
It's Arwen. Just seeing how things are going. It's been a while since we talked.
Oh, man, that's great stuff. So he goes on. What is meant by this whole thing about Arwen giving him her seat is that it was Arwen who first thought of sending Frodo into the West and put in a plea for him to Gandalf, direct or through Galadriel or both. And she used her own renunciation of the right to go west as an argument. Her renunciation and suffering were related to and enmeshed with Frodo's. Both were parts of a plan for the regeneration of the state of men. Her prayer might therefore be specially effective, and her plan have a certain equity of exchange.
So it's not as simple as just exchanging seats.
Yeah.
It's not
just tell them you're Arwen and Domiel. Here's a wig.
Yeah. Or texting a picture of a QR code or something. Like, here, just use this. They'll never know. It's not.
Just scan it.
It's not that. It's not so transactional. It's just she put in the request, recognizing that's what was needed.
I love that.
I love the idea that it seems like Gandalf put in the plea.
That's the thing. She went to Gandalf, either direct to Gandalf or to Gandalf via Galadriel.
Or she went to Gandalf through Galadriel. But ultimately, it was Gandalf who would have put in the request to the Valar to allow Frodo to come. Yeah.
Yeah. Or even have made the decision on his own, because he would have that right, as we'll get to. There's a passage you're going to read that mentions
That's right. Yes, that's right. So, yeah, he would have probably be the one to make that decision. And it just makes sense.
Yeah.
And that her prayer would be accepted because of the decision she herself has made and sort of this plan. That makes a lot
how
of
they're
sense.
tied in together. It's beautiful. And I think it's beautiful that she's the one who came up with the idea. That even Gandalf hadn't thought about that idea yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get some more on the mechanics of how this worked. And this is answering the question that I just asked myself about whether it was Gandalf who decided this. So Tolkien says, no doubt it was Gandalf who was the authority that accepted her plea. The appendices show clearly that he was an emissary of the Valar and virtually their plenipotentiary in accomplishing the plan against Sauron. He was also in special accord with Círdan the shipmaster, who had surrendered to him his ring and so placed himself under Gandalf's command. Since Gandalf himself went on the ship, there would be, so to speak, no trouble either at embarking or at the landing.
I love that. And then James and I actually talked about this in episode 326 when Arwen gave Frodo the jewel, but not in the context of this question. So I'm glad we were able to revisit it. But yeah, it makes me remember what we said then. It was sort of like, he's with me.
Right, yeah.
It's not, who's going to stop Gandalf from bringing Frodo at this point? And that's because Gandalf has the authority. He is their representative, their plenipotentiary. He has the authority of the Valar in Middle-earth to make these decisions. He's their representative. And so, Arwen asks him either directly or through Galadriel, hey, I'm giving up my spot. I've given up my spot. It's gone now.
Right.
Why don't we give it to Frodo? He's going to need that healing. And
it makes perfect sense.
Very good idea. Oh, well, let's do that, yes.
I'm going to say it was my idea.
Yes, I'll steal your idea and make it my own. It's a very mansplaining wizard thing to do. All right, so that sort of addresses that first part. But what about the second part of that question? It really is an interesting one that we've only touched on. Maybe we talked about it more in season 1, but we haven't touched on it much since then.
Yeah, probably.
What is thought to come of mortals that reside there or that go there, that visit there? And we're not talking about our Farazan buried in the caves of the Forgotten.
He didn't exactly visit so much as attempt to invade. All right, well, let's start by staying in that same letter number 246. Tolkien quotes Gandalf's response to Frodo back at the fort of Bruinen on October 6, 2 years before this. Alas, there are some wounds that cannot be wholly cured, said Gandalf. Not in Middle-earth. Frodo was sent or allowed to pass over sea to heal him, if that could be done, before he died. He would have eventually to pass away. No mortal could, or can, abide forever on Earth or within time.
Yeah.
So that's pretty clear, even if it isn't really the answer we want to hear.
No.
But Tolkien explains the purpose for Frodo. Tolkien says, he went both to a purgatory and to a reward for a while, a period of reflection and peace, and a gaining of truer understanding of his position in littleness and in greatness, spent still in time amid the natural beauty of Arda unmarred, the earth unspoiled by evil.
Wow. Okay. That is interesting. So we've talked about the reward for Frodo, and yet Tolkien makes it clear it is a reward, but it's also a purgatory, a place for him to gain a more accurate understanding of his own place in things. I like that. Yeah. It's his position in littleness and in greatness. So maybe it goes back to that idea of Frodo wanting to be seen as a hero and reminding him that he's just a part of this, but also in greatness. Like, you did accomplish something.
Yeah, allowing him to appreciate his own accomplishment, but do so humbly and recognize that he's just one part of a larger plan.
Yeah.
And to do it in a place that's unspoiled by evil, that's as close to Arda unmarred as exists on Arda today.
Exactly. So that gives him the ability to heal in a place where there is no flaw, there is no sickness, there is no malady.
Yeah.
Yeah, unspoiled by evil. Man. That is some good stuff. And I know we're going to come back to this letter because I already know what the question is in the mailbag for next week, folks. So I'll just tell you, we will come back to this. So if you all are reading that letter along at home, you're like, yeah, but what about this? Trust me, we'll get there.
We'll talk more about this. Yeah.
But is there anything else that can give us a clue just as to how mortals might experience life in the Undying Lands? And the answer is yes. Yes, there is. In Morgoth's Ring, which is volume 10 of History of Middle-earth, in Myths Transformed, section 11, there is a part in, I feel like I'm reading a contract, paragraph 173.49, paragraph,
the section called Myths Transformed.
Exactly. Subsection
A.
So Myths Transformed, section 11, there is a part entitled Aman and Mortal Men. Sean, take us there.
That's right. Yeah, there we read about how in Aman, the bodies of the Eldar aged only along with, at the same pace as, their spirits.
Yeah.
It says, the Eldar that remained in the Blessed Realm endured in full maturity and in undimmed power of body and spirit, conjoined for ages beyond our mortal comprehension. Which led Tolkien to his next question. If it is thus in Aman, or was ere the change of the world, and therein the Eldar had health and lasting joy, what shall we say of men? No man has ever set foot in Aman, or at least none has ever returned thence, for the Valar forbade it. Why so? To the Númenorians they said that they did so because Eru had forbidden them to admit men to the Blessed Realm. And they declared also that men would not there be blessed, as they imagined, but accursed, and would wither even as a moth in a flame too bright. Beyond these words, we can but go and guess.
Wow. Okay, so why can't we let men in? Well, first of all, because our boss says we're not allowed to let men in. That's good enough reason for me.
That's answer number one.
Yeah. And it's a pretty big answer because I don't want to be the Valar who decides to gainsay Eru because we know what happened to Melkor. But also they had this belief, like, look, even if we could, you'd show up here into the Blessed Realm, you're not going to be blessed. It may be blessed, but it's blessed because the Eldar are the ones who live here. It's the Undying Lands because it's the Undying who live here.
Right, and not because it makes everyone who lives there undying, like we've talked about since season one.
And Tolkien proceeds in that writing with a really good, lengthy discussion. I mean, we could talk about it for an hour on its own, far too lengthy for the mailbag. He basically explains, I'm trying to give you the TLDR version for sure here, the body and spirit of a mortal would eventually lose cohesion. The Fea and the Hroa, that is their spirit and their body, they would become totally out of sync because the one would age as it's supposed to naturally and the other would not because they're in the Undying Lands. And as a result, their life would be, as he writes, the most swift passing of all beasts. So instead of escaping fear and sorrow that's related to the mortality of men, that mortality would become a burden to a mortal man, as Tolkien writes, unbearably to the loss of all delight. And it's a terrible fate, really.
Yeah. And it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, but the idea, but I like the metaphor of withering as a moth in a flame too bright. That kind of helps it come home to me a little bit.
It really does. It visualizes it. It makes you realize this is a very different place and a mortal there is going to run into problems very quickly. It's not where they belong,
Yeah. You're going to burn out in a sense. And whether that's just like purely an emotional burnout and you are in misery and despair, or like he says, the loss of all delight, or if there's a physical component to that,
right?
It's not where you belong, and it would not be what you think it would be.
That's the thing. Your Fea, if you're mortal, your Fea will age and move forward because its eventual destination is outside of Arda. So even if they could give your body immortality, imagine if your body stayed immortal, but your spirit did not. Eventually it becomes out of sync and your spirit leaves, essentially.
Yearns to escape or just
wants to be gone, but your body won't let it. A miserable existence. So, yeah.
Wow.
We will probably come back to that. I know we'll come back to letter 246 next week, but I won't be surprised if we pull a little bit more from that section of Morgoth's Ring next week.
I think so.
But for now, folks, that wraps up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Do come back next week, folks, as we do something I honestly never thought we'd do. Finish The Lord of the Rings and catch up with Gildor.
Yeah.
It'd be good to see him again.
But folks, Alan and I want to thank the members of Team PPP. That's our editor, Jordan Rennells, Barlaman, Becca Davis, social media manager, Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator, Katie McKenna, graphic artist, Megan Collins, and website guru, Phil Dean.
Now, please take a minute to check out the prancingponypodcast.com. It's where you're going to find show notes, outtakes, Prancing Pony ponderings, and our online storefront where you can get PPP merch, including chapter-specific artwork from Megan.
And please take a moment to visit our library page. The Prancing Pony Podcast has always been about the books, so if you're interested in a book that we've mentioned on the show, you will find a link for it in our library. And we do get a small amount of compensation when you make your purchase, so we thank you for that.
Indeed, we do. And we also want to thank our patrons at the Kierdance contribution tier. I'll start with DeMay in Alaska, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Joseph in Michigan, Kathy from North Carolina, Carlos in California, Brian in the UK, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, Erwin from the Netherlands, Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, Zaksu in Illinois, Sarah in New Jersey, Joshua in Massachusetts, Lucy in Texas, Keith in Alabama, and Erica in Texas.
And there's also Carson in Oklahoma, Vivian in California, James in Massachusetts, Ann in Kentucky, Sean in New Jersey, Mason in California, Maureen from Massachusetts, John in Japan, Olivia in London, Robert in Arizona, Nick in Wisconsin, Lewis in South Carolina, Thomas in Germany, Craig in California, Bailey in Texas, Kevin in Massachusetts, another Paul in Colorado, and Julie in Washington. Thank you all so very much for your support.
Indeed. Thank you.
And make sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe now through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast app.
And one last thing, as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and most of all, your big books with plain red leather covers to Barliman at the
We
Prancing
like
Pony.
those.
Yeah, I got room on my shelf. Come on. To Barliman at the prancingponypodcast.com. And if you want your voice literally heard, just send us audio of your question by visiting podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us.
Please be sure, though, to still email the question to Barliman. Even though Barliman's been a lot more reliable lately, there is still a lot of mail to sort through. We'll try to get to you just as soon as we're able to.
As always, though, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time,
Farewell, friends.